Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen demands to be paid to babysit her stepson. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay my son's stepmom to babysit him? My son is 5 years old, and only in the past 3 to 6 months has his father and his partner been consistent in his life. My son's father sees him for 2 nights every other week. He picks him up late Friday night and drops him off early Sunday morning. Now, when he first started being consistent, I would offer money to make sure my son was fed and safe. I only did this because for the past 5 years, he would give excuses of, "I have no money to feed him," or "I have no petrol." My son adores his dad, so I offered the money so that he had no excuse not to spend time with him. After about the 3rd time of being consistent, his dad said, "You don't need to offer me money anymore. I'm working full-time and I want to step up more." I didn't ask for child support, and I never have. Everything my son has, all of his toys, his clothes, his school stuff, every experience he's had, I've paid for, and I'm proud of that fact. Fast forward to a month ago, and I received a message from my son's stepmom. They aren't married, but they have been together for 3 years. They have a kid together, and they're engaged, so it's easier to describe her as a stepmom. The message had said that it isn't financially fair on them to have to pay for things when my son wants to visit them. She's asked for $100 a night, so $200 every 2 weeks, to pay for his food, clothes, anywhere they go, and any toys that he wants when he's with them. I responded with, "If he wants a toy when he's with you, either you or his father can message me and I'll be happy to transfer the money to one of you as long as the toy comes home with him." She said that was irresponsible parenting on my behalf for not wanting my son to have nice clothes and toys when he's at his dad's house, and that anything bought with them should stay with them. I agreed and said anything they buy for him should stay. She then made a big deal and posted on social media about how I'm a bad mother and refusing to take responsibility for my son. I screenshot it and sent it to his father and explained the situation to him. He apologized and said that he had no idea. She then messaged me accusing me of trying to break up their relationship because I'm a jealous ex and that she doesn't think it's right that she should have to babysit my kid for free. I said that's fine. If my son isn't seen as part of your family and is just a kid that you have to babysit, then maybe the custody situation should be revised. I know it's harsh because I don't blame my son's dad. I'm just at a loss here, and I feel like a major jerk. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but seriously, go for child support. You're letting down your son by not holding his father to account for part of his upbringing, and that money is for your son, not you. You need to step up and advocate for him so you have the appropriate resources to give him the upbringing he deserves. I found my wife's secret Google account, and I'm sick to my stomach. I, 36 male, met my wife, Bailey, who's 33, 9 years ago through mutual coworkers, and we hit it off immediately. I fell absolutely head over heels with this woman. She was everything I was looking for. I had gotten out of a toxic long-term relationship right before that with a woman that Bailey had been acquainted with but not friends with. I had blocked her on everything, and I had no contact with her since the breakup. We got married right after the tail end of lockdown, bought our first house together, and started trying to conceive. That was difficult because Bailey has PCOS, but last year she finally gave birth to our first daughter. I'm having a blast being a dad, and it's kind of a dream come true. I finally got my happy life with my perfect wife, until last Monday. My laptop's battery died, so I opened up Bailey's work tablet with an attached keyboard. You can set it up like a monitor to check on some tax stuff. She wasn't home, it was just me and the baby, but we've never asked permission before to use each other's stuff. We've always just been open like that. There's nothing for us to hide, or that's what I thought. When I opened up the internet, I noticed she had the incognito tab open. Never in a million years did I expect to discover what I did. My wife has a secret Google account with a photo album saved, so I clicked on it. Did I discover an affair? Nope. In this Google album were over 300 photos, 348 actually, of my ex, the woman I was with right before I met Bailey, the woman who tormented me and made me feel worthless. The album said that it started back right around the time Bailey and I started dating and was updated as recently as 2 weeks ago. The photos range from candid shots with family to pictures at her work functions. There were even pictures from her yearbook. I don't know how Bailey could have found her old high school yearbook photos though. Photos from vacations, ID photos from work, pictures of her in crowds, screenshots of videos, and screen recordings of videos. It was just her. The other people in the photos would be scribbled out, or the photo would be cropped and zoomed in on just my ex. There were other things I found there too. There was another album with just zoomed in pictures of my ex's hair. Come to think of it, Bailey had recently started wearing her hair differently and my ex had a very identifiable hair type. There was another album with screenshots of comments on social media. Of course I can't find them because I have her blocked. Like Facebook groups she's in and public posts. And my ex is very low-key on social media. I can't imagine the lengths Bailey went to find them. My ex literally lives in another country now. There were also different links to the exact outfit she was wearing, like very specific blouses and trousers you'd have to really go looking for to find. A special water bottle I remembered her purchasing, and identical hiking boots and sandals. So basically, my partner of almost a decade has been creeping on my ex-girlfriend to the point of buying her exact clothes and changing her hair. And now I'm starting to realize Bailey's new interests over the years were just my ex's. Bailey has turned herself into my ex. Everything feels like a lie. Our love feels like a lie. The things we share feel like a lie. I threw up and had a panic attack. I looked at our daughter and I felt betrayed. I haven't confronted her yet. I don't know what to do. I want to run away with our daughter. I want to print out all the pictures, leave them on the table and disappear. I don't know what to do. I just want to throw up. Update. The next day when I had calmed down, I called several social workers and therapists. I was planning to confront her there. Unfortunately, the only places that take our insurance didn't have an opening for another couple weeks. So, despite what a lot of you think, I've known my wife for nearly a decade, and even while I was confused and upset and doubting things, I didn't think that she'd be a danger to me. We took the baby to grandma's and I asked her to go for a walk with me. I didn't beat around the bush and straight up said, I found the folder. Her face got very red and she froze, but also tried to play dumb at first. I was persistent and she started crying and begged me not to leave her. This is what I uncovered. Bailey first started looking up my ex out of curiosity, to keep tabs I guess. But over time it became more pathological. It's like she got addicted to it, but she also wanted to make me happy. Okay, maybe I talked about my ex a lot more than I thought, and Bailey wanted to emulate the good parts. She told me she really doesn't know who she is, and my ex's image was something she latched onto because she had me first. Finding information about her became a game. Finding the clothing and objects became a game, by searching for things like her water bottle until she could compare the products to a photo and find the exact one. The reason why I couldn't find the posts wasn't because I had blocked my ex, but because my ex had made a new Facebook under a different name. Bailey found her profile by searching up family members. She made fake social media and added enough mutual friends until she could see my ex's posts and until her private Instagram accepted her. She weaseled her way into her exercise Facebook group where the videos had been posted and searched her school on a yearbook website to find the pictures. Over time, she just collected the images and would get excited to find something new, despite the fact that my ex is extremely private on social media. Then she got sloppy and comfortable, and that's right around the time that I just so happened to open the work tablet. We took a break. It was a while. We made it to couples counseling, and Bailey and I also began seeing separate therapists. She still has not had an assessment with a psychiatrist, but it's on the list. She promised to stop and deleted the album in front of me. Slowly, certain clothing items began to disappear from the closet. I still do not entirely trust her, and that's for me to work on. I'm afraid she has another secret around somewhere, like a backup. The physical mimicking, though, is actually stopped, including the hair change. We're still not okay, but I want us to be okay, and it's okay if that takes time. If we end up breaking up over this, that's something I'll have to deal with. What I do know is that my wife is incredibly insecure and misled. I really don't want to walk away from her like that. I'm 28 female. My husband, who's 33, has been babied by his mother all his life, and now it's ruining our marriage. What can I do? I genuinely don't even know where to start with this because we have so much history together, but here we go. My husband and I have been married for 10 plus years, and now I'm learning what weaponized incompetence is. I spent the first several years of our marriage begging for the least bit of help. Promises were made and always broken. I grew up in a household of 5, 2 parents, 3 kids. We learned how to share responsibilities at a young age and always worked together to keep the house nice. My husband grew up pretty much an only child because his sister is 10 years older than him and was in and out of the house throughout his very young years. The big difference between our families is money. He grew up with a maid, and anything the maid didn't do, his mother did. He had no chores and no responsibilities. I was young and naive when we first got married and assumed that he would grow up too. that he would share the housework and not leave me with literally everything. I honestly didn't even expect 50-50. I would have taken 90% if he'd just do 10%. He did nothing. I mean nothing. I didn't want to put up with it, and I tried my hardest not to. We argued about it all the time. Fast forward to now. Have the arguments about cleaning stopped? Absolutely not. They're much less frequent because I feel like a part of me has just given up. I struggle with severe depression and have throughout pretty much my whole life. He knows how bad my struggles have been, and that's what makes it harder to accept that he has been leaving me hanging all these years. The house has fallen into disarray because I can't keep up with it. It's a 3-bedroom because our plans were to have 2 kids. It's just us and our 2 cats. Why? Because I couldn't raise a kid on my own. Married, but in nearly every way I feel single. I feel alone throughout everything all the time. I gave him an empty threat of divorce last week. Empty because I have no one and nowhere else to go. He got up and did the dishes. I was in shock. The first thing he's ever done. Immediately afterwards, my rocky confidence in his ability to change was shattered more when he approached me and wanted praise for cleaning the dishes. Now every argument sounds like, "Hey, let's not make a Mountain Dew can pyramid next to the bed." Or, "Can you stop shoving food down the sink drain that has no disposal? Because the entire house smells like rotting food now." Always ends with, "But I did the dishes." This man got a job from his mother at 16 at a business she owned in a position that she created for him. She's paid him weekly regardless of whether he shows up or not. For the record now, he hasn't showed up to work in nearly a year, so I don't want to hear that he has a job and you're at home, because no, he doesn't. I just feel like I'm in such a bad place now, and I feel completely trapped. I don't want to leave, I just want things to get better. I want him to hear me. I want him to care about how stressed I constantly am. I feel like I'm starting to harbor resentment, and I just don't know what to do. Please help. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Still complaining, stressed out, carrying the full mental and physical load, and looking 25 plus years older? Or do you see yourself in a job, independent, happy, and no longer caring for a 33, 43-year-old then? You're making a decision by failing to do better by yourself. Get a job. Have a separate bank account at a different bank. Start getting your ducks in a row for divorce. Manager blames me when it wasn't my fault. Gets a taste of his own medicine. I started at this new place a month ago and everything has been going great. It's the Canada Day long weekend here and I was super busy tonight. Everything was totally fine until near closing when my last 2 tables each received raw food. Table 1 had raw chicken in their chicken burger and Table 2 had raw ground beef in their sliders. It was so awkward. I got it rectified immediately and had it comped, but then my manager took a 180 and suddenly took care of each table's entire bill, which they didn't have to do. Both the tables felt really bad this happened for themselves, but also me for suffering without a tip. The raw chicken table gave me a $20 bill, and the second one asked me to charge him 11 cents so he could still tip me. I thought that was super nice of them to do, and they were clear to both my managers that I didn't do anything wrong. It was the kitchen. When I went to leave, one manager came up to me and literally started the conversation with, "I'm not saying you're a bad server, but..." Then he continued to chastise me for those 2 issues that I literally couldn't do anything about. I tried to reiterate that to him, but his eyes kind of glazed over, so I just decided to end the conversation as I was already 2.5 hours into overtime. I'm annoyed because I literally had 10 tables all night just cycling through, one after the other, no breather, and everything was fine. One table tipped me $150 on a $340 bill. They even requested me tomorrow. Another did the same thing requesting me. Yet here I am, 12:30 a.m., getting told I'm not a bad server, but... I'm going to talk to him tomorrow about it because I'm genuinely kind of mad. I hate how this crap happens to us. Like, no, let's not acknowledge how none of my food got sent back prior to this and I had no issues, but let's just zero in on these 2 unfortunate things that happen to be in my section. Update. So I talked to my coworkers and they all just told me to forget about Perry, my manager, because he'll get defensive and might even go behind my back to our senior manager and twist the story since he's willing to try to gaslight me into thinking that the raw food was my problem. Everyone was equally surprised this behavior happened from him. I was too, because we all never thought that he had stooped to that level, and yet here we are. So I was going to speak to our main manager yesterday, but since it was Canada Day, I was still very busy and everyone was stressed. So I decided to send an email briefly outlining the situation and ending it with, I'm just wondering if you could provide some feedback on the situation, as I take this situation seriously too, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing the most to effectively handle the delivery of raw or undercooked food to guests. Thanks." I didn't include the tipping thing because I thought it was unnecessary, as I wanted the focus to be on the raw food. I did, however, add that when the manager and I jointly spoke to the guests, both guests made sure to add, "To be clear, we're not upset with her. She's doing great. We're upset with the raw food." I just sent it, so hopefully it works out fine. This manager is very open to conversations, and I doubt we'll just sweep it under the rug. I'll let you know what happens. Update. I spoke with the manager that I sent the message to. As I explained it, she slowly started to understand what was going on. She wasn't upset with me. She said that she had talked to him, but overall, she said that I did everything I could have done by alerting them, getting the chef to apologize, offering alternatives, etc. I hope he gets some sense knocked into his head and realizes he can't just randomly pin crap on me. I'm not stupid. I'll take responsibility where I'm supposed to, but why would I literally absorb the blame for something I wouldn't have ever been able to control the outcome of? This will probably cause minor friction for a while and cause him to be passive-aggressive, which he already exhibited the day after. But I didn't tolerate it and I called him out on it. I had a table ask for the bill, but when I brought it over, the customer decided she wanted another round before getting the bill. So I went to get the new drinks. While I was doing that, someone asked me a quick question, which took me about 10 seconds to answer. But when I turned back, I saw that he had given the customer the old bill with the merchant copy, the one without the extra drinks. Essentially, he just gave away 2 drinks for free. I told him that I appreciated his effort to help, but now it created more work. He would need to awkwardly ask the customer to pay for the drinks separately or refund them and provide a new, combined bill. I pointed out that this situation could have been avoided if he had checked with me first. Then I told him to decide how he wanted to handle it and I walked away. Basically, didn't talk to him for the rest of the night. Anyways, thanks for the responses, everyone. I felt less gaslit after posting here. My son's teacher took his cell phone home and her kid broke it. Last week on Friday, my son, who's 10, got his phone confiscated at school. He was messing around with it during class, and the school rules are clear about phone usage during class without permission, so I totally understood. The normal protocol is that the phone would go to the office where it would be returned to the student at the end of the day or the next day. His teacher, however, apparently forgot to stop by the office before going home after school, so she accidentally took it home with her, and through some negligence, the phone broke in the hands of her toddler. Admittedly, she was very upfront about it and even came to our house personally to tell us what had happened and to apologize, which I do respect. She suggested the repayment plan for the phone and offered an old phone of hers for him in the meantime, but it was essentially a brick with a screen. After she left, I sent an email to the school about everything, simply because I think it is something the school should be involved in, since she's a teacher and easily took home a confiscated device, albeit by mistake. Received a response Monday morning apologizing for what had happened and promising to address the issue. So my sister-in-law works at the high school but smokes with the teachers at the junior high, which is where she bumped into this teacher who was upset and said that we were being jerks reporting it since she already promised to pay me for the phone, offered an alternative, and is a good teacher, so we're messing with her career unnecessarily. So yeah, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Taking it home accidentally could be understood to a degree. There's 0 reasons why it should have been within her toddler's reach. Info. OP, did you actually see the broken phone? Maybe it's just my suspicious little brain, but there was a similar post a while ago where everyone heavily suspected the teacher of stealing the phone and trying to give a crappy phone back as a payment. The original phone was not actually broken, the teacher kept it. Although this teacher offering a payment plan suggests that they're willing to completely pay you for a new phone, not just to steal and give you a crappy phone back. OP. Yeah, it's busted. Screen severely cracked, and that weird ink of dead pixels is blocking 3/4 of the screen. Looking at the damage now though, unless her toddler is the next Hulk, I'm starting to doubt that that was the cause since he had a protector in a case. Not the jerk. The teacher did not follow guidelines. Albeit your son was in the wrong. However, phone's price is scale, and she had no reason to take it home with her. How her toddler then got a hold of it and broke it is a completely different issue. Teacher is upset she got in trouble for not following the rules, just like your son was upset his phone was taken for not following the rules. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the teacher? Please let us know. If she took that phone home by accident, she should have made sure it was in a safe place. That teacher messed around and found out. Am I the jerk for yelling at my husband for making my daughter feel bad? So my oldest daughter, who I'll call May, is 16. She has a job, has had it for about 5 months. Out of all of my kids, she's the most mature. She's also good at saving, but she rarely spends money on things she enjoys and instead keeps it all in her bank account. My husband wanted to have her start paying her phone bill immediately. It would have been about $50 a month, but I said no and eventually compromised to the beginning of October. Note, my husband, her stepfather, is very money tight, and he tells her to pay for everything she wants. Now, I agree with this somewhat, as she should be monetarily responsible so she's ready for college, but he wants her to pay for everything. Anytime she asks for something, he'll respond with, "You have money, buy it yourself." Now, fast forward to today. May has been out of town on a trip with her class, and she was going to be gone for a week. Because this is a national event that happens every year, and they're in the city, everything is very expensive. She has a credit card under her name that's connected to my account, and I said she could use it for her meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But snacks and souvenirs she would have to buy on her own. She called earlier, and we were talking while my husband was in the room. She started complaining about how expensive everything was, and she jokingly said that she was going to go bankrupt once she returned from her trip. I told her not to worry about it, and if she needed, she could use her credit card for whatever. Then my husband pipes in and says, "Stop guilting your mother to give you money. Whatever you want, you can buy yourself." She was quiet for a moment before saying that she wasn't asking for anything, and then he repeated, "Don't guilt your mother. How can you be morally okay with that?" She said she wasn't calling to ask for money, that she just wanted to complain and that she was going to hang up. I took her off speaker to tell her it was fine, but she just swore up and down she wasn't trying to guilt me and that she was just going to pretend the call never happened and that it was fine, and then she hung up. I was so upset that I yelled at him. I told him he was being ridiculous and that she was still a kid. I left before he could respond. I'm still angry. She apologizes to me every time she buys a meal because she thinks it's too much. I've noticed that she buys her own breakfast and only spends money on lunch and dinner, even though I've said she can do all three. I'm angry and I don't know what to do. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk for yelling at your husband, but you are the jerk for continuing to be in a relationship with someone who dislikes your kid this much and makes her feel guilty for her existence and the associated costs. You need to make it clear that if he doesn't change his behavior immediately and completely, you'll be out the door. My Karen mother won't let me go to work. Cast. We've got me, Dragon Crystal, myself. We've got Mom, my entitled mom. We've got Dad, my entitled dad, and Tim, my supervisor. Backstory. I've been in lockdown for 2 weeks, ended last night, because of my last shot giving me some side effects. Also because of that, my work schedule account was inactive until my lockdown is lifted. Not to mention, a relative just passed, and my parents, knowing that my lockdown lifted yesterday, still dragged me along with them, while not allowing me to check if I'm on the schedule or not. Now on to the story. Like I've mentioned above, that I was in lockdown for 2 weeks and my work schedule account was inactive during that time, and I was unable to see if I was going to work today or not. I just heard about my relative passing last night before going to bed. I believe my workplace account reactivated around 6 a.m. of today, but I'm not entirely sure because my parents came bursting into my room demanding that I go and help babysit the kids, my cousins, while they helped set everything up. Me, drowsy state of mind. What? Mom, hurry up and get dressed. We have to go help out at our relatives. Me, Mom, you know how much funerals freak me out, right? Mom, stop making excuses and get up now. Me, fine. Wait, last night was when my lockdown lifted. My supervisor might have scheduled me to work today. I said stop making excuses and get ready. The entire car ride there, they'd be peeking into the backseat and complaining at me to stop checking on my phone and to pay attention to them. Like I'm supposed to backseat drive or something. Not supposed to, I know. As soon as we arrive, I'm ushered into the kitchen by my mom, where my aunts were along with their kids, my fellow cousins, while my dad walks into a separate room with my many uncles. My aunts have been cooking and mourning over my grandpa, whom I rarely ever saw or knew. My mom immediately tells me to either help with cooking or just keep an eye on the kids, since I'm so used to being the babysitter for any relative's kids I stick to babysitting. 7 a.m. rolls around, and I want to check if I'm scheduled to work or not. I pull my phone out, and as I'm typing in my login, my mom steps over and screams at me to put my phone away, or I'm going to get punished. I'm almost 30, not 18, so I just slip my phone away again. 8 a.m. rolls around, and I sneak my phone out again. This time, my dad snatches my phone out of my hand and threatens to break it because I'm spending too much time playing video games and don't deserve to have a phone, before handing it over to my mom, who happily slips it into her purse. Great. 9:15 a.m. is rolling around now, usually the time my shift starts. I'm just constantly checking the kitchen stove clock, and I'm freaking out, thinking about how I'm going to explain this to my supervisor if he calls my phone and I don't pick up. I go over to my mom and ask for my phone back. Her smug response, "Why do you need it?" Me, "Because I might have been scheduled to work today, and my lockdown was lifted yesterday." Mom, "I'm sure they don't need you today. It's Saturday, and we're busy here. Your dad and I don't have time to take you back home." We were literally just sitting around, cooking and chatting. Oh, so busy. Me, "Can I at least check if I'm on the schedule or not, so I can call out? Because we're usually the busiest on the weekends." "No, stop wasting my time and go babysit your cousins or help cook." I'm livid and just go back to babysitting, while dreading the call from my supervisor. Sure enough, a couple hours later, 3 p.m., an hour ago in real life, my mom finally hands me my phone saying, "Oh, someone named Tim called you at 9:36 a.m. Me, dread fills my already shaken up heart. "I told you that I might be scheduled to work today." Mom, "Well, I didn't know that." "How would you know? You don't work there." "You should have checked before coming here." Me, boiling with anger. "Maybe if you listened to me and had let me check before forcing me into the car, this wouldn't have happened. Now I've got a no-call, no-show marked onto my attendance." Mom, "Stop being so dramatic. It's not like you're not late to work all the time. That's why you were fired from your other job." BS. Me, more angry now. I was laid off at one job, and that was my first job. For some BS reasons. Every other job I quit for my own personal reasons, or the cinema was because we got bought out, so everyone and myself lost our jobs because of that. Mom, "Well, you still got fired." Before heading back to the kitchen. "Well, forget you too, jerk." My dad, hearing us arguing, comes out to start complaining at me about being disrespectful, being an ungrateful brat, etc., before heading back into the other room. I'm just sitting in the hallway private messaging Tim about my current situation, and his only response is, "We'll talk about it during your next shift," which has yet to be posted. You want a screenshot of my desktop at 10 a.m. and another at 6 p.m.? A long time ago, I worked on the service desk for a relatively large, but not gigantic company in the UK. There were several service desk teams spread across the country with their own policies and practices and such. Mine was pretty chill. The attire was smart casual. The relationship we had with users was friendly. We had a team leader who would really look out for us. I think I was lucky, given what some of the other service desk teams had to deal with. Suits and ties, users interrupting you when you're on the phone, team leads who would just vanish for half a week with no warning. While working there, I was living in a rural area, a hamlet that was about a mile from the nearest bus stop, 9 miles from the nearest train station, and 2 miles from the nearest shop. And my commute was about an hour through the countryside. It was a nice drive, but it was also unpredictable. Flooding on the roads wasn't uncommon, with detours around the affected areas taking 20 minutes. You'd occasionally get snow up in the hills when it's sunny everywhere else, and if you were unlucky enough to find a herd of cattle being moved down the road, that could add 10 minutes to your commute. The unpredictability of my commute was something I had raised in my interview. I wanted assurances before I had even been offered a position that my commute situation would be taken into consideration. As such, I made an arrangement with my team leader, and with the agreement of the rest of the team. I would work the late shift from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and as there would usually be 2 to 3 people in by that point, so the desk would still be covered if I was late. If I were late, I would make up the time another day or after hours. During my probation, I was asked to log when I arrived and when I left, but once I had passed, my team leader trusted me. However, Note that this informal arrangement was actually against company policy, and it hadn't been signed off by HR. Not that our local HR team would have minded, but head office probably would have complained. Unfortunately, my team leader ended up leaving the company, frustrated at being passed over for promotion one too many times. Once he left, I ended up reporting directly to the service desk manager. The service desk manager would come down to visit the office once a month. Once he took over the team, he started coming down once a week, and it turned out that, on his second and third visits, I arrived late for work. Not that late, I should add, maybe 5 minutes on one day, 7 minutes on the other. However, nothing was said, just my apologies and my teammates saying that's okay. On the third week, however, a meeting was scheduled at 8:30 a.m. for 9 a.m. I was invited to the meeting, despite not starting until 10 a.m. When the meeting started and they realized I wasn't due to work for another hour, they rescheduled the meeting to start at 10 a.m. And on that particular day, I encountered snow in the hills on the way to work. On a section of my commute where I would normally be doing 60 or 70 or even 80 miles per hour, visibility was down to around 20 to 25 meters, and my speed had dropped to sub 30 miles per hour. At one point, I had to stop due to a car turning right across the traffic, so I grabbed my phone, took a photo of the snow, and sent it to my team to tell them that I'd be late. I finally turned up to the office about 20 minutes late, at which point I saw I had several missed calls and teams asking me to join the meeting. It turns out that the meeting was still ongoing, so I joined it. As soon as I got in, my new boss stopped whoever it was that was talking and began to berate me in front of everyone else for my tardiness. Boss: "This meeting was supposed to start at 9 a.m., but we postponed it because you didn't start until 10 a.m. It's now 20 minutes past, and you've only just shown up." Me: "I'm sorry, boss. I wasn't aware that the meeting had been scheduled. I would have left earlier if I knew." "So, you plan to be late? Is that what you're saying?" Me: "No, that's not what I meant. My commute is unpredictable. Sometimes it takes longer." "Then you leave earlier. Nobody else had issues with their commute this morning." Me: "I encountered unforecasted snow on my commute this morning. I didn't expect to be delayed." Boss, sarcastically: "Really? Snow? In April?" "Yes, I took a photo and sent it to my team about 40 minutes ago so they'd know I was running late." "But you didn't send it to me." "I sent it to the team on Teams. You should have received it." "You should have emailed it to me." Me, getting frustrated: "I don't have my work email on my phone." "Then install it on your phone." Me, rather confidently: "I don't think you have the authority to tell me what I should install on my personal phone." There was a moment of silence, and I could see a few of the faces on Teams react with shock to my comment. My boss said we could talk after the meeting was over, and said that I had missed so much of the meeting that there's no point in me remaining there, so I should get to work. I dropped off the call, looked at my team, and then asked if anyone wanted a coffee before heading to the machine with 2 mugs. I returned with 3 and got to work, checking with my colleagues if they minded me grouping out of the phones while I waited for our boss to call me back. They said sure, so I spent the time working through tickets, making changes that wouldn't require me to make any calls or remote into users' desktops. At about 10:50 a.m., the call from my boss came, on my personal phone. Boss: "OP, I would like you to go somewhere private." Me: Boss? This is my personal phone. I think you should call me on my work phone or Teams." "I'm calling you on your personal phone so you can go somewhere private." Me: "If you want this conversation to happen in private, I can call you from a conference phone in one of the meeting rooms." "No, that isn't necessary." Me, interrupting: "It's fine, I'll call you back." I hung up and grabbed a stock laptop I had been building the previous day and a USB stick, taking them into one of the meeting rooms I'd seen was vacant. When I sat down, I called my boss from the conference phone, while logging into the laptop with my details. I should probably add now that my boss had called me from a mobile number rather than a landline. All calls from company landlines were recorded, but calls between mobiles were not. By calling him from the conference phone in the meeting room, I could be sure that the call would be recorded. Me: "Hi boss, it's OP." Boss: "This really wasn't necessary. Your phone was perfectly fine." Me: "I'm sorry, I don't keep a charger in the office as my last cable got stolen. The battery doesn't last that long anymore, and I didn't want it to run out before the end of the day." "Fine, whatever. We need to have a talk to address your recent tardiness." Me: As I said on the call earlier, my commute can be quite unpredictable.
That's still no excuse. You know what your commute was like before you took this job. You should have anticipated that you might need to leave early.
Me. Yes, and I addressed this in my interview and said that I wanted assurances that I would be allowed some flexibility in my start time in case my commute took longer than anticipated.
That's not in line with company policy. You start at 10 a.m., so you should arrive by 10 a.m.
Me. I made an agreement with my previous team leader that if I arrived late, I could make up the time another day.
But you didn't make that agreement with me. And how do you think your colleagues think, with you arriving late all the time?
It's once or twice a week at most, and for every day I arrive late, I arrive early on another day. More often than not, I put in over my allotted hours. And when I made the agreement with my old team member, my colleagues were happy with it. I'll send you the email now. While I had been talking, I'd been searching through my emails for the original email outlining the agreement I'd made with my team leader. The email chain had actually started on the day of my interview with him emailing my two colleagues, explaining his proposed arrangement and seeking their okay. They had both said yes, and when I started working there 5 weeks later, he forwarded the email to me as confirmation that everything was cool.
Boss, I don't need to read this email, OP. Whatever arrangement you had with your previous team leader ended when he left. This department now works to the company policy. You are to arrive on time.
Me.
Boss, and to make sure you do arrive on time, from now on, I want you to send me a screenshot of your desktop every morning when you start working at 10 a.m. with your computer's date and time visible. And I want you to send me another email when you finish your work at 6 p.m. every evening with your computer's date and time visible.
Me. But if my computer has had an update overnight, it can take 5 minutes to start up. What should I do then? Should I send you an update log?
Boss, then turn up 5 minutes early. I have another meeting to go to, so I need to leave now. But I expect the first email tonight. I will tell you when you can stop.
He hung up before I could say okay or goodbye or anything. I logged into the call recording software and grabbed the ID of the call I just had. If I pulled the recording out of the server, it would have been logged. Instead, I had logged into the application server directly, searched for the recording, and copied it to a USB stick. I hadn't gotten around to installing antivirus on this computer yet, so there was no data loss prevention system in place. That's the kind of software companies install on computers to lock down USB drives and track what people copied to and from USB drives after their use has been approved. I went back to my desk. I told the team what had happened, and they said that it sucked. We had a chat about what I was going to do, that I'd have to start arriving 20 to 30 minutes early every day to ensure I'm logged in at 10 a.m. They offered to grab an old laptop and set up the desktop so it looks like my desktop, so they could take a 10 a.m. screenshot if I did turn up late. I explained that it wasn't necessary. If I turned up late, I'd just explain why and involve HR. For the next week, I did as he had asked. I would arrive anywhere from 15 to 40 minutes early and log into my computer. And then I'd go off and make coffee, hop downstairs and outside for a cigarette, just waste time until 10 a.m. arrived. Just before 10 a.m., I'd be back at my computer, take the screenshot and send it to my boss. Then at 6 p.m., I'd do the same. Probably a week and a few days later, my boss visited our office. I remember turning up about 25 minutes early that day. My boss made a smarmy comment about how I should be happy and proud that I'm being punctual. I just said, sure, checked my computer, hadn't done an update overnight, offered to make coffee for the team, then went off with 2 mugs. I came back with 3 mugs at about 10:45 a.m., and my boss commented on how long coffee takes to make here. We had a bean-to-cup machine. It would grind the beans for every cup. It was good coffee, but not particularly fast. Once I'd handed the cups to my colleagues, I grabbed my cigarettes from my bag and headed off outside. I came back around 10 to 12 minutes later, and my boss asked me where I'd been. Me. Enjoying my morning coffee with a cigarette. Boss.
But there's work to be done.
Me. I don't start work until 10 a.m.
Just because you start at 10 a.m., it doesn't mean you can't get started early.
Me. Sure I could. But as I don't start until 10 a.m., I don't have to. Unless you're approving me to do overtime.
No, I'm not saying that. But if you're here, you might as well make yourself useful.
Me. If I remember correctly, we both acknowledged last week that I start work at 10 a.m. and finish work at 6 p.m.
That isn't what was meant by our conversation.
Me. But that is how I interpreted it. I didn't wait for him to reply, just turned around and sat at my desk. It was 9:59 a.m. at this point, so I took a screenshot of my desktop, emailed it to him, and got to work. The routine continued through to the end of the week, and then partway through the following week. The boss had visited our office again on a day where I had arrived over 30 minutes early. We had had very heavy rain that day, so I had left extra early to avoid any detours due to flooding. I'd also dressed appropriately for the weather: Wellington boots, jeans with waterproof trousers, and a heavy wax jacket. On days like this, I'd normally come in through the fire escape. Well, it was actually a terrace, but facilities didn't want us using it for health and safety reasons, so it was only used as a fire escape. As it was sheltered, I could leave my wet weather clothes on the terrace to dry. There were 2 other pairs of wellies and heavy jackets out there already. Enter the building in my dry clothes, and then head to a bathroom to get changed into something a little smarter. As I walked past my boss, he looked shocked that I'd walked in jeans and a t-shirt. I pointed down at my shoeless feet, then outside at my wet weather clothes. He asked me if that was really necessary. They should do a reality TV show where they send city boys to live out in the countryside. That would be entertaining. A good 5 or so people in earshot laughed. He nervously laughed along with them. I went off and changed, came back, offered the team a coffee, left with 2 mugs, came back with 3, grabbed a cigarette, and went downstairs for a smoke. I was back at my desk with 5 minutes to spare, logged in, waited until 9:59 a.m., took a screenshot, emailed it to him, then logged into the phones and got to work. The rest of the day went on as usual. However, come 4 p.m., he had vanished. His laptop was still at his desk, but he was nowhere to be seen. Normally, he would leave around 4 p.m., the same time as my 2 teammates. At about 4:45 p.m., he finally emerges, looking visibly shaken. He tells me how today has been terrible, how one of the other offices have serious phone issues, and asks me if I've been getting calls from other offices. Me. No, our phone group is only configured to take calls from this business unit. Boss. What? Calls are supposed to overflow to your lines if the other lines are all engaged. Me. Not since I've been here, and that's a good 18 months now. Me, thinking to myself, oh wow, I just did myself over, and my team. Boss. I'm going to add you into the central phone group. We need as many people on the phones as possible. Me. Okay, I'll see what I can do, but we don't have training on or access to any of the systems used by other offices. Boss. Just provide support where you can. At about 4:50 p.m., I started getting calls from the other offices. Probably about 50% of them I can't do anything about. I tell the user I'll log a ticket and assign it to the relevant team. They would frequently ask me to transfer them, but I explained that their call came to me because all their lines are likely engaged. I'm sure I upset a lot of the users that day. I mean, some of the calls were about programs I had never even heard of. In one case, I picked up the phone to someone who I'd already answered the phone to and logged a ticket for. 5:45 p.m. comes along, and the frequency of calls hasn't ceased. Evenings are usually quite chill in this office. It's usually a good opportunity to work on requests and unfinished admin work. But the phone was unrelenting. 5:50 p.m. it continues. 5:55 p.m. still going. I get off a call just in time for 6 p.m. and log out of the phone. I spent a few minutes going through the few things I still had open on my screen and was about to take a screenshot when my boss, still in the office past 6 p.m., asked me why I'd stopped taking calls. Me. I finish at 6 p.m. Boss. But we need people on the phones. The team at the office that has gone down is usually in until 8 p.m. We were already short 2 people on the phones with you helping out. Me. In the old days, an event like tonight would be one of those nights where I make up for the lost time from being late in the morning. But, as we agreed, I start at 10 a.m. and finish at 6 p.m. It's now 6:03 p.m., so I'm already past my finish time. Boss. Look, OP, sometimes we need to put in a little extra for the company, for the department. We really need you tonight. Me. Do I get paid overtime? No, I can't authorize that. You can have time off in lieu. Me. I'm happy to do the flexible working, and I'm happy to do overtime, but I don't do time off in lieu. Boss. OP, I've been really pleased with your performance over the last 2 weeks. Impressed even. Please don't disappoint me tonight. I turn around, took a screenshot of my desktop, emailed it to him, and locked my computer. Me.
I want you to send me a screenshot of your desktop every morning when you start working at 10 a.m. with your computer's date and time visible. And I want you to send another email to me when you finish working at 6 p.m. every evening with your computer's date and time visible. Those were your exact words. How could I disappoint you? I've done exactly as you asked. I don't think that's exactly what I said. Yes, it is. I have the recording of the call. I have it transcribed. That is exactly what you said. Boss, looking shocked and confused. But... Me. Okay, I'll stay until 7 p.m. Boss, sounding relieved. Thank you. Me. But first, I want an email from you reaffirming the agreement I made with my previous team leader, with local HR CC'd in. And I want next Friday off, paid. No holiday allowance. Making up for all the time I've wasted in the office arriving early so I can send you your 10 a.m. screenshot of my desktop. Boss doesn't say anything. Or I can send the recording and transcript of our call 2 weeks ago to HR and the logs of you deleting the recording from the system to our data protection officer, unless you can show that you gained her approval before deleting the recording. Boss, send me the email from your old team leader again, the one with the agreement. He replied, reaffirming agreement, and I ended up working until nearly 7:30 p.m. as the forecast said the rain would be stopping then. I ended up leaving 2 months later. My rule is always 2 years. If I don't get a promotion, I leave. There was no chance I was getting a promotion after that episode with my boss, so I left 4 months short of my rule. I ended up getting a job at a city closer to me for more pay, no answering of phones, and with fewer C roads on the commute, which made the journey a lot more consistent. And when they asked why I'd only worked for my last employer for 20 months, me. The commute was too unpredictable. Have you ever had a boss who was a real jerk? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. I've got a husband who's a jerk, I'll tell you that much. These people should be seen, not heard. During the fall before lockdown, I had a guest who was noted as a VIP and a high-ranking loyalty member. She would be staying with us for 2 weeks. We did our thing making her feel welcomed and gave her my card in case she needed anything. That was a mistake. On the second day of her stay, she cornered me while I was walking down a hall of the hotel on the first floor. She had said there was a lot we had to discuss. She had brought up the fact that my breakfast chef had said good morning to her and that one of the housekeepers greeted her. I asked if these things were a problem. Yes, I can't believe it. These people are just seeking attention. They should be seen and not heard. I was a little flabbergasted and didn't understand. I told her we have a friendly staff here, and I wouldn't ask them to change that. She informed me once we started doing those things, the employees will want more and more from us. She had told me that she works in training hotel staff for resorts all over the United States, and she knew what she was talking about. I let it slide, knowing my stuff because I grew up in the business. I wasn't going to tell my staff to stop greeting people because a guest thinks it's attention-seeking. Fast forward to the last day of her stay. She had been minding her own business with a few stupid notes about whatever she could think of here and there, but otherwise nothing as much odd. She asked again to sit down with me, and she had a notepad. She went down section by section that the staff was still seeking attention, and that the way we fold the first sheet of toilet paper was incorrect. Then she spoke of one of my staff that I had seen as my future supervisor. She was cautious and shy, but she was breaking out of her shell, showing some serious skill. When I was not present, this Karen had told me that she was speaking to my associate, and my associate, while explaining something, was fidgeting with a pen. The Karen had taken the pen and threw it at my associate. These were all things that she had admitted to me. When I asked her as to why she felt a liberty to throw a pen at my associate, she said this: "You need to train them at a young age to not fidget and respect elders with their full attention when they are being spoken to." I didn't let this go. I told the Karen that since day one, we have been nothing but hospitable to her and welcoming for us to have it just thrown back at our faces. She tried to interrupt me, but I kept going. I continued that my staff does not have to put up with this, and I won't tolerate anything other than her not coming back to my hotel. To go as far as to tell me how to do my job and how my staff welcomes guests is not up for debate or for criticism unless they were anything but welcoming. I escorted her out, and the last thing she said to me was, "Sad, I thought you were one of the good ones." I have since moved on from the hotel due to many issues I had encountered over the time I had spent there.
Before I left the hotel, my last good deed was to print off multiple pictures of Bill Murray and hide them anywhere I could think of. I'm currently working security at a museum of art. It's truly a job that makes me happy. I get to watch the sunset over the bay every night I work. I receive texts from my old GM asking me if I'm ready to come home. Not for $1 million and a personal assistant. This will be my last post here, I suspect. Thank you so much to this small corner of Reddit for allowing me to vent and share funny stories about my life in hospitality. It's been great. Until next time. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that no one was going to like the food she was serving at our wedding? To preface this, we live in the South, USA. I'm a bridesmaid in my friend's wedding, the maid of honor to be specific. Therefore, I'm helping her plan a lot of her ideas and DIY some stuff. Her fiancé is in the military and currently in a different state, so he can't help that much with the wedding right now on the little stuff. She likes sort of unique things and tries to fit into a certain aesthetic on almost everything she does. The other day we were discussing what kind of caterer she wanted. I told her that the first thing to do was figure out what type of food she wanted and then choose a caterer based off of that. Well, after a few days she texted me and told me that she found the perfect style food and was ready to go sample some caterers. I asked her for details, but she said she wanted to keep it a secret, but she wanted me to go with her to sample and I would find out then. I agreed. Well, when we arrived to an old Roman or Greek, I'm unsure. Shop/place, I'm a little confused. She tells me to trust her on this, so I try and let it go as I like trying new foods anyways. The food we sample was just not something I like. It was olives, the expensive, strong-smelling cheese, and some random dried berries and nuts. I'm not a picky eater, but I just didn't like it, and I honestly wasn't sure how this could even be a meal. Maybe finger foods, but not a meal. It has very odd tastes. I asked my friend if her plan was to serve this as the main course at her wedding, and she says yes, along with some fruit. She's not vegetarian or vegan, and neither is her family or fiancé. She asked me my honest opinion if people would like it, and I told her I didn't think people were going to like it. As I said, we live in the deep South, USA, and everyone has pretty basic tastes in food, which is what I told her. I told her this could be okay as like finger foods or cocktail hours. People still probably wouldn't eat it. But not the main course. It was really not enough to be a main course, even if it was good food. She called me a jerk, as apparently this is the only type of food that will fit her wedding theme. I would rather be honest with her now than people trash-talking her wedding because of gross food. Am I the jerk here? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the bride? Please let us know. Depends on what kinds of nuts and cheese we're talking about. Am I the jerk for causing my husband to miss my doctor's appointment that he wanted to go to? As some of you may know, we've lately been experiencing a rise in temperature, and it's bringing so much stress and discomfort. I'm 4 months pregnant, and we had an important appointment with the doctor, and since my husband's car wasn't working, we called an Uber instead. We got inside, and my husband started complaining about a few things, like the driver driving slow, the driver taking too long in busy roads, then complained about the AC not functioning properly. He went on a rant about how reckless and lazy Uber drivers have become to not have proper AC to make customers feel comfortable when it's hot outside. The driver kept turning the AC up, and inside the car it was freezing. Still, my husband kept complaining about poor service. The driver offered to roll down the window, and my husband called him an idiot as it wouldn't do any good because there was no wind outside. The driver politely told him he didn't appreciate his tone, to which my husband loudly replied that if he wasn't being a jerk, he would have spoken to him politely. The driver pulled over and asked him to step out. My husband got mad, argued with the man, then got out and told me to get out as well. I told him no, I don't have to because I wasn't the one who called the driver names. He called me unbelievable to be siding with some random Uber driver over him. I told him it's not about taking sides. I have an important appointment that I waited for, and I couldn't be late for. If I were to take sides, then truth be told, the driver didn't do or say anything wrong. But my husband, on the other hand, he called me selfish. All I was thinking about was myself and ignoring the fact that he was being repeatedly disrespected and mistreated by the driver. He gave me one last chance to get out so we could get another Uber, but I refused to get out because I already paid and I was already late. He asked if I was sure about this decision. I said yes. He shut the door and the driver drove off. My husband was home waiting for me, looking really upset. He asked me if I had a great time riding in that Uber after what the driver did. He then said he missed the chance to be with me at the doctor's appointment because I selfishly kept him out and sided with the driver. I replied he was being disrespectful from the beginning, then escalated by yelling at the driver and calling him names, so he rightfully got kicked out of the car. I said if he cared so much about attending the appointment with me, he wouldn't have behaved like that. He kept sulking and claiming I wasn't being supportive of him as my partner who took time off work to come with me and support me. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. If Reddit boy acted like that, he wouldn't be around to tell about it. My Karen sister allowed her son to give my dog dreadlocks. My sister is a single mom with one son who's 14, and they've been staying at my place for the last few because they lost their apartment and she's saving up money to get them a new apartment. She, however, has driven me crazy lately. She's up late at night on her phone or watching TV. I go to work at 3:30 a.m., so I've been getting less sleep. Her son constantly bothers my daughter. She has brought men over from the bars, etc. She doesn't do chores, they make messes, and I've addressed these issues so many times, and I just get ignored. The final straw came when I came home from work last night and I saw that my dog had dreadlocks. Not a lot, but like maybe 8 or so. What the heck? I'm not sure if that's alright. He sure didn't seem comfortable and was pawing at them. I'm worried because I've heard horror stories about people who didn't wash properly and nasty stuff grew inside of their dreadlocks. I asked him about it and he said he thought it would look cool and he's not finished yet. I was so upset when I saw that, and later I found out that he posted it on TikTok. That was the final straw. I told my sister she had to leave. She of course pulled the whole "but we're family" card, saying how she's a struggling mom and how it's just a dog and it's not a big deal. I told her I'm sick of this. He knew better, and quite honestly, I'm tired of living with them. She of course called my parents, who sided with me, thankfully, but our siblings and cousins took her side, who bombarded me with texts and calls telling me that I need to take them back in. She eventually moved in with my brother. Anyways, I'm wondering if I did the wrong thing here. I feel bad because they're struggling, but giving my dog dreadlocks was just crossing the line. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his sister? Please let us know. If you gave my dog dreadlocks, you wouldn't be around to tell about it. Accused of working with criminals because I delivered them a pizza. I never mistook this job for low risk, but I never imagined it could potentially get me thrown in jail. We got a pretty sketchy delivery call at a late hour. Our front of house is constantly slammed with everyone desperate to eat at a table again now that they've had their shots, and they were in the weeds, so I grabbed the phone. Before I could even finish our standard greeting, the guy just goes, "Yeah, it's Mac. I'm ordering a pizza." I'm not much for small talk either, so I'm rolling with it, like, "Good for you, Mac. Pick up or delivery?" You know, just rattling off the standard questions. He answers the first few, but he seemed hesitant or confused. He argued with some other guy behind him for a second, then got back on the line and ordered like normal, as though none of the preceding stuff had ever happened. Whatever. I caught his delivery and out I went. It was a standard large pizza, no toppings, no extras. They were going to pay cash. I pull up and it's a scary, run-down, sparsely populated apartment complex. Mostly broke college students in there now though, so I wasn't too concerned or anything. I get to the door, and when I knock, it eases open a bit. This didn't seem like the ideal neighborhood to keep your door unlocked, but not my business. I called in, "Hey, pizza." There was no response. I called a little louder, "Got your pizza out here." And an alarmed voice from inside was like, "Shh, just come in." No. I get that request weirdly a lot. Like everyone from sketchy apartment bros to suburban soccer moms asking me to bring the pizza to the dinner table because they're busy. Some people even pulled this during lockdown, but it's a long-standing company policy, a good one, that entering the home for any reason whatsoever is a hard no. So I said back, "Can't do that, but I can leave it out here if you don't want to come to the door. Just need payment first." There was a silence, and then some shuffling, and then the door shut and locked. And the guy was like, "What do you mean payment first? That's not what we agreed on," through the closed door. I was standing there wondering if this was the first pizza this man had ever ordered in his life, because payment first is basically implied, right? But I'm not looking for any confrontation or trying to be a jerk, so I just tell him, "Yeah, so our store policy is payment first," and he erupts screaming. That's not what Mario and I discussed. So then I thought maybe he was trying to pull some kind of scam on us because nobody at our store is named Mario, and I'm the one who took his order, so I know what we discussed. I decided if they weren't going to pay, I'd made a reasonable attempt to deliver and I could safely head out now. As I'm preparing to do so, another guy, looking back now, I realize he didn't even have a box, walks very confidently up to the door, pounds on it like a heavy bag, and grunts, "Pizza's here." I didn't know if this dude in the apartment had ordered 2 identical pizzas from different shops, or if our pizza had taken long enough that he thought we weren't coming and called someone else, or I had the wrong apartment or what. But it was weird enough that I decided to just go. Especially because pizza guy number 2 was looking at me with a real intense stare. Way more malice than I'd ever be able to muster on behalf of defending the turf for our joint's pies. He said something like, "Can I help you?" or "Wrong apartment," or something along the lines of a cordial, "Go away." But I was already on my way out and didn't really process it. I went back to the shop, told the story to my chef. We laughed and guessed at what it could have been to drive this man to order 2 pizzas at once. I didn't think about it again for several weeks. Those several weeks later, I was in the shop and a couple of cops walked in. Not in uniform, but they had badges. They asked me if I'd been at such and such apartment complex on such and such day, and I was like, "That was weeks ago. I have no idea where I was." So they were all like, "In that case, you wouldn't mind coming down to talk to us about what you do remember." But I was like, "Really? Nothing." And they said, "Well, that's fine. Let's talk anyways, and see if there's something you might not realize is relevant that comes back to you," and all this stuff prodding me. I told them, "I'm working right now, but I can come later next week maybe," but they were really insistent, which should have set off some flags in hindsight. They were like, "Well, this is really a pressing matter, and we'd appreciate if you came in right now. We'll explain it to your boss so there won't be any problems. You'll really be helping us out." Their not being able to chat at me at work should have been the first red flag, but I know I had not done anything illegal, so it didn't cross my mind that I could be in any sort of trouble or have a reason to worry. Especially because when I got to the police precinct, everyone was extremely friendly, like I was actually doing them a favor. They didn't throw me in a cell or try to intimidate me or anything. They brought me in a nice, air-conditioned conference room and gave me a comfortable chair and asked if I wanted anything to drink, and really just kind of talked to me for about 20 to 30 minutes. To this day, I'm still confused about this. I think they even offered to order food, if I remember right. I declined even the most basic offers because I was anxious to get back to my shift. Didn't need my coworkers getting any wrong ideas. I played along and made nice because they did get the okay from my boss to go as long as I needed. But in the back of my mind, I was like, "Didn't you say this was urgent? They're running short-staffed at work, so we can trade hot takes on the College Baseball World Series." Eventually though, and I think they were trying to be subtle, but they definitely weren't, they shifted to asking me about what they really brought me in to talk about. They asked me about if I'd made a delivery to the apartment complex, and it obviously racked my brain between when the cops first arrived and then. So I told them actually I had, that I wasn't sure if it was exactly the day they were quoting me, but it was around then. I figured they'd ask about the delivery, but didn't want to get ahead of their questions. I figured a brain dump of information would make me come off as guilty. Plus, I didn't want to accidentally tell them more than they were expecting to hear and land myself there longer. But instead of asking any of the questions I expected they'd ask, they said, "And how long had you known the guys you were delivering to?" Kind of confused, I responded, "I didn't." I could see that my answer disappointed them, but it was the truth. They collected themselves pretty quickly though. There were 2 detectives, the same 2 who had come in for me in the store, and one kept insisting on the facts as they saw them, and the other kept trying to bend things in my favor. So the Ben guy was like, "Okay, sure, not like y'all are best friends or anything, but you at least knew them as customers, right?" I wasn't sure what "knew them as customers" was supposed to mean, because to me, it was synonymous with not knowing them. So I said no. They changed topics. They asked how long the delivery had been planned for. I told them everything had to be ordered the same day unless it was 4 or more pies, and I didn't remember exactly when they called, but per store policy, wouldn't have been more than 1 hour before it was delivered, probably sooner based on where they were relative to the store. We went back and forth like this for way longer than I was anticipating, them asking me questions that seemed to imply I knew something. Me feeling super confused and giving them visibly disappointing answers, reminding them I knew nothing. Eventually, they seemed pretty frustrated, and they were basically like, "Stop lying to us, man. Cut your crap. Your friends rolled on you. It's done." And I'm sitting here thinking, I have friends? But of course, in all seriousness, I was shocked by the change of tone because I had no clue what they were talking about, and I told them so. And they were both like, "Come on, man. You're just embarrassing yourself at this point." With one trying to reassure me that if I just told them what I knew, they could still help me, and the other saying I was too stupid to seize this last chance. Well, no reason to sit around and be spoken to like that. I got up to leave. Before I knew what was happening, I was being Mirandized. It was like a horror movie nightmare playing out in slow motion in front of my eyes. So I stopped with my, "I want you to know that I want to get back to work, but I'm gonna be chill out of courtesy," demeanor, and lost my crap at that point. I kept really forcefully, without coming off as erratic, or so I hoped, insisting that I did not even know what they were talking about, like I'd been saying all along. They were not having any of it. They kept saying, "Videotape doesn't lie, man. You want to see the tape before you lock yourself into another lie? The jury's gonna eat this up." Jury? I don't even turn right at red lights half the time. Plus, you had video all this time you were grilling me to remember what happened, and you could have just shown me a video? What the heck? I knew I was in over my head at that point. A million thoughts were swirling around, and I was so overwhelmed and scared. I finally said what I should have said way back at the beginning, though I didn't say it nearly assertive enough because I was trying to, act innocent, not seem guilty, not make things worse than they had somehow already become. I was like, "Should I be talking to a lawyer?" And they said, "Do you want to talk to a lawyer? Did you do something that would necessitate the aid of an attorney?" And the other guy's like, "If you want a lawyer, we'll get you one. But I have to say, that does not look good on you." And I should have believed him. As my dad has now drilled into my brain, you never talk to the police, only your lawyer does. But at the time I thought, yeah, I guess asking for a lawyer does make it seem like I did it. Crap. Then they showed me enhanced frames of the video and timestamps, and they're saying all this stuff. It was really all a blur at this point. But one thing in particular stood out. They said something that they had already said a time or two before, but it hadn't totally sunken in until then. They alleged, "Your buddies thought this would be some quick money. They thought it'd be real slick to order a pizza instead of just calling and saying, 'Bring the stuff up.'" At this point, it had been established that they thought I'd transported some large sum of ill-gotten cash into the apartment, and that we wouldn't be suspicious or we wouldn't follow up. "I know you're a good guy. You didn't know what you were getting yourself into, but if you're not honest with us, we can't help you." I had told them repeatedly about the other guy who had shown up to supposedly deliver a pizza. I even pointed him out on the footage. Unfortunately, the cameras didn't have audio, so they couldn't hear me arguing with the people in the apartment over the measly few bucks, or more importantly, hear the other guy say, "Pizza." Because the other guy didn't even have a pizza box, and I did. They didn't believe me that I wasn't the pizza part of this operation. To recap, apparently what they'd uncovered from the real criminals is that they were meant to take receipt of some money. The guys inside the apartment were told something like, "That afternoon you'll get a pizza," to try and prevent anyone from saying anything incriminating on paper. These dumb jerks in the apartment did not understand the instructions and actually ordered a real pizza instead of just waiting for their cash delivery to show up. I'm pretty certain all of that arguing I'd heard on the phone was one of the other criminals asking something to the effect of, "Are you sure you're supposed to order an actual pizza?" Because what else would they have been arguing about right then? So once I connected all the dots, it was a matter of proving my pizza delivery was legitimate. They tried to get a record of the delivery when they talked to my boss, but we're a small shop. We only keep tickets through the end of the week, and we just sign a piece of paper confirming our tip amount every night. These guys wouldn't have factored in since they didn't pay. I didn't have anyone but the criminals to corroborate my story, and there was nothing in it for them to exonerate me, or they would have done it by now. But then I remembered. The chef! I told him all about this delivery. I begged the cops to talk to him and reminded them I'd followed them right out of the store before I had known what this was about, so they could trust he was totally untainted. Sure enough, he recounted it exactly as I'd told him and told police. The stories matched near identically. The cops went through our phone logs, but these guys had called in their order from a burner, so that was of no help. I figured the chef would be enough, but after I'd been in the precinct for nearly 8 hours total, they said they were going to go ahead and hold me until they could verify I didn't go with a decoy pizza and somehow give them money another way, or until they found the real delivery guy. They never would because they didn't believe me that he was the other guy outside of the apartment on the video without a box. I don't know if he had the cash taped to him or what, but the cops were convinced it couldn't be him because he didn't have any bag, box, or something to hold the money. Finally, realizing this was not a misunderstanding that was going to go away, all these years of watching Law & Order kicked in and I asked for my phone call. I got my dad on the line and he of course said, "Don't say another word," and showed up with an attorney who had me out within an hour of his arrival. I was formally cleared of all involvement the next day, barely got an apology. None of this will show up on my record or anything, but still, you'd think they'd be a little more remorseful about what they put me through. My boss gave me a couple of paid days off, having seen how serious it all was with questioning the chef and searching the phone logs and everything. I think he was just glad I wasn't actually a criminal, because for the longest time all they would tell him is I was involved in a situation and they needed information. So yeah, tread lightly. Don't be like me and make this your whole career. Or do, if your only alternative is to become a criminal. Have you ever been questioned by the police? If so, how did it go? Please let us know. Don't say anything, always get an attorney. You want to ignore the group project? 0 for you. Well, my sister, now 30, was in high school at the time. She was in her junior year and had a class in biology or something like that. Some sort of science class, she says. The teacher, a sweet 60-year-old lady, had announced a very big project the class was going to do. They were going to be put into groups of 3 and had 3 weeks to complete it. They had to do a ton of research, write notes, get pictures, the whole 9 yards. It was worth massive points, and if you impressed her enough, she would choose one group to get extra points to go to another class. Everyone was crazy excited to get some points in another class that they weren't good in. Less work for them. So my sister got paired with a disabled girl, Annie, just stating she was wheelchair-bound because she did so much work while having her own problems, and it was impressive. She was very sweet and a great team member. It was the other person that was the problem. Brittany, fake name of course, was spoiled. Not in the money aspect, but in the, "But I am so pretty and frail. Can't you do this simple task that I could easily do myself for me, please?" type of spoiled. My sister just didn't like her for that. So they get paired and quickly split the tasks. It's about a week after the project is started and my sister makes a group chat and basically says, "Hey, let's get together and go over what we have and help each other out this weekend." Annie responds yes and asks for the place. Brittany never responds. So at the end, my sister says, "So, we will meet after school and go to the library. Brittany, I know you've been reading the messages, so don't be late." You can, of course, guess that Brittany didn't show up or even respond to the messages. But my sister didn't bother with talking to her. The second week passed and Brittany is still nowhere to be seen to go over the project. But still, my sister did not go after her. But then the day of the project came. My sister's group was the first to go up. First, my sister went up, Annie slowly made her way up, and then Brittany tried to go up. Tried. But before she could make it to the front, my sister stated, "It's okay, Brittany. Since you didn't do any of the project, you don't need to be up here with us." With what she said was the sweetest voice she could muster with a smile. The room just went even more silent. The teacher said, "What do you mean by that?" "Well, I mean that me and Annie have worked on this project since day 1 together, and Brittany has done literally nothing at all. I'm not sharing my grade with her." Now Brittany starts tearing up. "She's lying. I worked hard on the project just like everyone else." So my sister says, "I can prove she hasn't." Brittany scoffed and said, "Then prove it," thinking that it was all talk. But it was not all talk. You see, my sister rocks at school and she hates slackers, especially people who try to take credit for something they didn't do. After Brittany didn't show up for the first meetup, my sister formulated a plan. 1. She emailed the teacher and had spoken about the subject of their project and how they were having trouble finding information. This puts the teacher in the know of what their project is and what everyone in the group should know. So the teacher started emailing her with references and books to look up. 2. They started doing their project in the school library. This helped because you had to sign in with your name to show who was going in. So for the past month, they had gotten very close to the library staff who knew them on a first-name basis and saw them come in to do their project, and they had evidence to show that Brittany never came with them. They kept using the group chat that Brittany never responded to, talking about times to meet up to go over the project. It showed how Brittany never even spoke to them. Finally, my sister spoke and said, "What is the subject of our project?" Brittany says the name of the class. Wrong. I mean, what is the subject of our project? Brittany doesn't say anything. Wrong. Give me some definitions that we used in the presentation. Brittany doesn't say anything. Where were you when we were asking our teacher blah blah blah? Brittany is silent. Do you even know how many pages our paper needs to be? The teacher finally stops my sister. She was calm, but you could see anger in her eyes. She looked at Brittany and just says, "Sit down." You could almost hear her deflate on the spot. She stayed very quiet throughout the entire presentation, and my sister believes they actually got like a 93%. Of course, the teacher was not thrilled about how Brittany didn't do any work, and she was only hearing about it the day of the project. My sister got a stern talking to, but nothing more. She was to hand over any proof she had, and she gladly did so. As for Brittany, she got pulled into the office after school, and from what was spread around, her father had absolutely lost it. It was later found out by a very gossipy friend of Brittany that because she got a 0 on the project and was proven through the librarians, the emails between the teacher, and the group chat that she did nothing, her father really went in on her punishment. He had actually leased a car for her birthday and was going to surprise her with it, but as punishment, gave it to her brother. She was grounded, her grade tanked a lot, and she just barely passed. If there was a group project, she had to report to the teacher on what she did and had to show she was actually working. And best of all, people stopped falling for the doe-eye routine. Of course, there were the boys that would fawn over her, but for the most part, people started calling her out, and she couldn't just get people to do what she wanted anymore. It was like that until the end of the year when my sister transferred out and never saw her again. My sister stayed in touch with Annie for a few more years until they simply drifted apart, but she still remembers her from time to time. Did you enjoy group projects in school or not? Please let us know. I could never stand group projects, but hey, that's just me. Cardio Karen and the Grand Hospital Tour. About 5 years ago, my girlfriend was in the ICU of one of our largest hospitals in Sydney, Australia. Needless to say, it was a stressful time for me, but she's all good now. This story occurred as I was walking back from one of the hospital's cafes to see my girlfriend. I was stopped in the corridor by an older lady, maybe early 60s, wide as she was tall, who asked me to take her to the cardio ward. Her tone was very polite, and I told her I don't work there, but directed her to reception. Her ladyship did not like this response. "Don't mess around. I know you work here. Take me there." Her sudden change in demeanor stunned me. "Come along. I don't have all day," she huffed. At this point, I should mention I was wearing a full suit and tie combo, as I had an unavoidable meeting later that day. Now, I like a navy suit as much as the next suave bloke, but the doctors in this hospital, when not in scrubs, mostly wore slacks and a collared shirt. Given the missus was a bit under the weather, I was sleep-deprived, anxious, and had no patience for her ladyship being a jerk. "Okay, follow me." We started down the corridor, through some doors, and up a flight of stairs, her pacing grumpily behind me. I could see a sign ahead, "Cardio ward to the right." So, unfortunately for her ladyship, left we went. We went up lifts, down lifts, upstairs and down again. A full 10 minutes into our Royal Prince Alfred Hospital tour, it must have occurred to her that I had no idea where I was going. A porter with a gurney stepped out of the side door and she immediately accosted him. "Your staff member here is wasting my time." It was almost comedic the way he looked down at her, up at me, down at her, then up to me. "Did you tell this lady you work here?" "No, mate. Literally the opposite." I smiled at the porter. The porter frowned. "Where you headed, love?" By now, she was quite exasperated. "What is wrong with you people? He should have taken me to the cardio ward, and don't love me." The porter, trying to hide his smile, told her to follow him and off they went. I overheard her grumble something about staff complaint as they waddled away. Gosh only knows what my write-up would have said about me. I hurried back to the ICU ward, happily armed with a humorous story to cheer up my girlfriend. Am I the jerk for firmly telling my husband I won't cook for his friend again? For context, my husband, male 33, his best friend, Dale, male 37, lost his wife this past March. Ever since, I've been asked by my husband to consider sending hot homemade meals to his suffering friend, and I've started including Dale in the meals I cook. It started off as 1 meal a week, then gradually became 3 to 5 meals a week. Then my husband started coming with requests from his friend Dale, wanting me to cook certain meals that he preferred. I wasn't so fine with it, as I already had not a lot of time to spend in the kitchen. I'm a nurse, and work has become very exhausting, as well as money we spend to buy ingredients we need to cook meals for Dale. Dale would send me texts or emails thanking me for the meals I sent him, but at the same time kept sending suggestions and new ways to improve my cooking, like how his wife made this meal more crispy or how this meal should have more sauce. I gotta say, I started feeling irritated, especially since Dale kept texting all the time, and when I don't respond, he'd text my husband, who asks me to please be more patient since this is a phase and will pass. A few days ago, I was in the middle of my shift at 11 a.m. when Dale sent me a text, but I was too busy in my unit and I didn't even look at it. I work in a big hospital, so the pressure is big. I got off work at 9 p.m. to find my husband at home looking upset. I asked him, and he told me his friend Dale texted me early in the morning to tell me he was having guests over and wanted me to cook him a meal so he could serve it to them, but I didn't respond and kept him hanging, forcing him to order food at the last minute. I was taken aback. I didn't know why he'd come to me expecting that I cook for his guests, knowing that I had to work. My husband said his friend was just asking, but I ignored him and made him feel like a burden. I told him A, I was busy working, and B, I'm not obligated to cook for Dale, much less his guests that I never met. My husband said that Dale would have said okay if I said no, but he thinks that I work too much if I can't take a minute to look at the text he sent. Dale said that. It's funny because my job's paying for the food Dale's been eating since March. My husband said I put Dale in an awkward position and should apologize and clear the air, but I told him that I'm no longer cooking for his friend, not even weekly meals, period. Since this is the type of treatment I get and being treated like a maid or a personal cook, then I'm not cooking for Dale ever again. I said this, then I went upstairs. My husband said I overreacted and was being insensitive towards his widower friend and should have had more grace because his friend is struggling himself in this hard time. My husband said he didn't know I had this cruel side of me and asked me to put myself in Dale's shoes to understand that he's struggling. Additional info. A. Dale doesn't work, and my husband says it's rude to ask Dale to pay for food we sent him when I complained about the stuff I'm having to pay for to cook. B. My husband says Dale already has other friends helping out, but not with cooking as they are single and none of them know how to cook, just like my husband. C. Dale thinks I work too much. How does that even concern him? I have no idea. Dale and I never really got along, but I keep it civil since he's my husband's best friend and is struggling to adapt as a widower. So I try to be graceful and understanding. My husband goes over to his house daily to help with whatever he can, so it's not just me helping, but because my husband doesn't cook, he thinks Dale deserves to have a hot meal or two weekly. Cooking is not a problem for me if it doesn't interrupt work. I cooked for my brother many times when our mother passed, but it's how Dale keeps texting me all the time. My husband works from home and takes care of household chores except cooking. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Dale? Please let us know.
I'd tell that husband maybe he should learn to cook for Dale. If Reddit boy tried to pull this crap on me, I'd be gone in the blink of an eye, and I'd take the house.
Lady, please. I'm just trying to get cake ingredients. So this just happened an hour or so ago. My grandmother and I went out shopping to get ingredients for my birthday dinner and the cake I'm going to make. My birthday is in 2 weeks, but the ingredients we needed are on sale and most of them are canned, so we went to get them today. My grandma decided it would be faster if I were to take a basket and grab the cake mix and pineapple and any other mixes we needed at home, and she went to get the peas, orzo, and bacon bits. I found the pineapple cans pretty fast, so I had plenty of time to look at all of the cake and brownie mixes. I had some music playing in my headphones, so I couldn't hear anything around me. While I was looking, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I assumed I was standing in their way and they needed something from the shelf I was looking at. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and stepped aside. I saw the lady start talking, so I pulled out one of my earbuds. Lady,
Can you help me find
whatever item it was, I don't remember. Me, knowing where most of the items are. Oh, that should be an aisle number, unless they rearrange the store.
Well, aren't you going to show me where it is?
Me, oh, sorry, I'm actually looking for cake mixes. I don't work here. I should probably note that most employees at this store wear vests, and I was wearing an olive green shirt I had just gotten for Christmas. Lady,
Don't lie to me. You obviously work here.
she gestured towards my lanyard, which I have a picture of my late husky hanging on. It also has a key to my home, which I have just in case I get locked out. Me, getting really anxious because I don't like confrontation. Lady, please, this is just a picture of my old dog and a key to my home. I told you where your stuff should be, so please leave me alone. You're making me uncomfortable. Lady, getting irritated.
I'm not leaving you alone until you take me to where the item is.
At this point, she had started raising her voice and had caught the attention of some people nearby. One guy who looked about my age walked up and asked if she was bothering me. Before I could get a word out, the lady started going off.
This young lady won't show me where this item is.
Other stuff I don't remember because I was trying to hold back tears. Guy:
Lady, she doesn't work here. She goes to my high school. I know her. Leave her alone.
At this point, the lady spotted an actual employee and walked off to harass them. I think the guy, who for the record actually does go to my school, I just didn't recognize him, and went back to picking out mixes.
My entitled parents are making me pay rent.
So I, 24 female, have recently moved back into my childhood home after finishing my master's. Before that, I was living in a city hundreds of miles away for 6 years. I worked full-time while studying and while I made every month of rent, etc. I'm still pretty in debt for my studies, like I'm perpetually at the bottom of my overdraft. I quit my job and moved home because my mental health is really suffering and has been for a while. I hated my job. Studying was so draining and I always felt so alone and removed from everyone else in my life. So I moved home and was unemployed for about a month and a half, and I've just started a new part-time job where I make just over minimum wage. I got back into work because I felt the need to go back to being productive and earning, but I'm part-time because I want to still be able to take time for my mental health and self-care and all of that. I spend about half of my weekly wage on driving lessons at the moment, and I spend another around 100 pounds every month on storage, as my mom informed me when I moved home there was no room for all of my belongings. So here's the situation. My dad has just asked me to start paying rent, and I don't think I should. For a little bit of context behind my feelings, last year my mom received around 200,000 pounds inheritance after a close relative passed, and she has since paid off the mortgage. She still works full-time and is a manager at her job. I'm spending over half of my earnings on driving lessons and storage while trying to save to pay off uni debts and buy a car and/or move out again. And my mom still has more than half of her inheritance, as well as a job where she earns about 7 times an hour more than I do. I get that it's a respect thing. I live in her house and I should pay at least a little bit, but I'm broke and I'm trying to get myself out of this hole, but it's tough enough as it is. My argument is, lady doesn't need the money, and yeah, I'm 24, but I'm her kid, and I just feel as though she shouldn't be trying to make money off of the kid she decided to have. Super biased and one-sided argument here, I know, but please let me know if I'm expecting too much and like victimizing myself. Can't tell if I'm the rational one here or not. Edit. I wanted to add my response to what a few people asked in the comments. The whole time I was at uni, my parents said I could come home whenever I want. It's my house too, and they never liked the idea of asking me for money to come back. So I asked, just to be clear, before I did come home if they would want rent, and they said they wouldn't, as long as I help around the house and get my own groceries, etc. I do both of these things. I'm not specifically opposed to the idea of helping them out, but what they're asking is unaffordable for me, especially after I'm paying for storage and learning to drive as part of their wishes. Also, I'm in CBT therapy at the moment, work between 25 to 30 hours a week, and already help around the house. Update. Okay, thank you everyone for all the comments. The main suggestion was, despite how simple it seems, to clearly communicate with my parents. I did. The main issue I had was that I came home under the belief that I would have a home here free of charge, as my parents always told me, including when I asked them about rent before I moved home. I spoke to my mom, and I'll pay a reduced amount of rent as I'm saving to move back out again soon, and hopefully a car, so I can travel for work, thus opening up even more career opportunities. Just FYI, I really don't mind being called the jerk. I get your point of view, fine. But please don't crap on me for my disabilities. I'm really honestly trying my hardest, and life is really tough. I'm not trying to use it as an excuse, but it really does impair my life by no small amount, hence the mention. Anyway, thank you all for your comments. Well, what do you think? Should OP have to pay her parents' rent or not? Please let us know.
Under these circumstances, I don't think I would charge my daughter rent. But to each their own. Please leave us a comment telling us what you think.
If you're not happy, then quit. Okay, boss. Those who have read my previous stories may know that I'm a jack of all trades, and I made a lot of different jobs before staying in the hospitality industry for a while. I never quit a job in my whole life without giving a suitable notice. But not this time.
My encounter with one of the worst managers I've ever had the misfortune to work for. My family was not rich, and I needed to get as much money as possible after I turned legally able to work to pay for my school tuition. I worked for a temp agency that specialized in logistic and transport jobs. I took as many jobs as possible: day jobs, 2-hour paid-only jobs, weekly jobs, and always made my employer satisfied. They trusted me even for the toughest jobs you can imagine. I have one simple rule: treat me with respect and I will respectfully work for you. Even doing sometimes overtime is fine by me, as long as the employer is nice. This is the story about me working for a new warehouse dealing with shipments. We were about 10 young men, all university students, and would just have to work from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. from Monday to Friday. No overtime, no extra pay on night shifts, just the basic minimum wage and nothing else. No cash for food nor gas money. Our job was to dispatch all kinds of parcels into different trucks. It was summer, so it was really hot. So hot that you could grill a steak on the pavement. And of course, no air conditioner. But that makes sense, as doors were always kept open. Not only was this job tough, but the warehouse managers barely respected safety rules. For example, parcels that exceeded 25 kilos are not allowed to be carried alone. When one of us dared to tell the aisle manager, let's call him Jerk, that it was too heavy to be lifted alone, he would just say,
Don't be a wimp. Everyone here's doing the same job. If they can lift it, you can do it. And if you're not happy about it, just leave. You're not irreplaceable.
He kept yelling the same things over and over in that small warehouse. We were all assigned to a different gate. Therefore, we were all working alone, but not too far from each other. Days were always busy, and we could only have 5-minute breaks for a quick shot in the toilets or a quick smoke. The worst was for the people assigned at the bottom end of the warehouse. They literally had to run the whole way if they wanted to take a trip to the washroom. Worst thing? Jerk barely helped anyone on the floor. He just spent his time walking around and yelling,
Don't forget, you're not irreplaceable. There are plenty of people begging for a job outside willing to take your place.
And the one I hated the most,
If you're not happy, then leave.
the job was already painful enough, but why did he need to make it more annoying? Sometimes parcels could barely fit inside a truck as it was getting fully loaded. Jerk would usually yell at us for being incompetent and would literally kick parcels, smashing the content to make it fit inside the truck, and proudly says,
You see? How can this be that complicated?
The icing on the cake was one night. We arrived as always at 2:45 a.m., all of us feeling sleepy and no one to open the gate for us. We waited until 3:30 until Jerk arrived and straight away yelled at us.
What the heck are you doing here?
Well, we're here to work.
The truck has been delayed. No need for you to be here. Go back home.
Are we still going to be paid? We showed up. No one told us not to come. He smugged.
Why would you be paid? You're not working. Now go home, and no need to come unless we call you.
We were stunned and furious. As Jerk left, we all agreed on a few things. Here is where the revenge starts. No one showed up at work the next day. I received a call from the angry Jerk at 3:30.
Where the heck are you? There's work to be done.
You told us not to come unless you'd call us.
Then what do you think I'm doing right now? Get up here.
Me. I'm sorry, Jerk, but you are not my employer. I'm employed by the temp agency. Therefore, all shifts must be confirmed by my employer before allowing me to go on site. The office opens at 8:30, so please call them and they will call me. I hang up. At around 9 a.m., I received a call from my temp agency asking why all of us did not show up. I gently explained everything, and the agency asked me if I could go there now. I explained that I could not, as I have to attend some classes. After a short conversation about the working conditions we had, the agency asked me if I could go there the day after. I told them I could probably finish the week. It was a weekly contract, but I would not be interested to stay any longer. They understood. We all showed up the day after, and sure enough, Jerk was PO'd. He started yelling at us, always stating that we were a really spoiled generation that knows nothing about hard work and take everything for granted, etc., and we all got back to work. Again, he started the same thing, not helping, but just yelling around.
If you're not happy, then quit. You're not irreplaceable.
I stopped putting parcels in the truck and said, You're totally right, Jerk. I'm not happy. So I quit.
What the heck are you talking about? Get back to work. You just told me that if I was not happy, I could quit. Then you're right. I quit. Get back to work, or I'll...
Or you'll what? I asked softly.
Jerk is right. I quit too, said another staff member. And within a few minutes, the 10 of us left the warehouse as Jerk kept screaming he'll get us. It was 5:30 a.m. and there was a ton of work to do, but only Jerk and some management staff in the office were left with a crap ton of work to do. I received another call from my temp agency who asked what happened. How can 10 people decide to leave their job on the spot like that? I explained that I simply did what Jerk told me. I'm not happy, so I quit. And then I added all the safety processes that were not respected at work. No safety gloves provided, no earplugs provided, carrying heavy goods without any help, etc. They told me they would have a meeting with the person in charge, but to please never do something like this again. And yeah, I still worked from time to time for this temp agency after that. My conclusion and what I learned from that? Treat people with respect and they will respect you. Treat them like crap and karma will simply get you. Hope you enjoyed the story. Have you ever had a manager who completely disrespected you? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I disrespect you, Reddit boy, because your head looks like a balloon.
The funniest I don't work here lady moment I've ever had. In my day job, I've been working from home, give or take furlough, for the entire lockdown period. We are in the planning stages to finally move back into the office soon. To that end, I was tasked along with a couple of management type people to head over to our local grocery store to price out supplies for a welcome back social event at our office. Cleaning supplies, plus food type things that we can put together in a grab and go style conference room function. Cast of characters at the store. We've got me, we've got boss number 1, boss number 2, and of course, there was also the Karen. For context, the dress code for workers at this store incorporates a white dress shirt, black khaki pants, and a black name tag on the chest. Those who are still masked wear black masks with the store logo prominently displayed on the cheek. None of us office workers were dressed in any way remotely resembling this. But we were all carrying clipboards to take notes for later, when we were ready to come back and buy the stuff. Hence the confusion, I suppose. Karen arrived, and without even a greeting started up with her demands.
You guys are out of this product. I need you to get me some from the back.
Me. Oh, sorry. I know I'm carrying a clipboard, but I don't actually work here. You can tell any employee from how they're dressed. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. Karen did not find this acceptable.
I do not find this acceptable,
she repeated redundantly.
You either help me this instant, or go get your manager, who will fire you, and then help me.
Boss 1 happened to be nearby down the aisle, so I flagged her over. You want to talk to my manager? Here she is. And I stepped aside. Karen lays into her.
You really need to train your employees better. This man,
accompanied by a finger jab to my chest,
is refusing to help me. You need to review his employment status and then get me what I need.
Boss 1 half ignores Karen and says to me, Hey, hysterical realist, did you get a second job at the store without telling me? I answered, Nope, I still work for you, not for them. She said, Okay then, carry on. I'm sure this lady can find a store worker to help her. Now, one unfortunate aspect of this culture we live in is that a woman in authority is not always taken seriously as she should be. It's doubly true for Boss 1, who, in addition to her gregarious personality, also is on the smaller size physically. Additionally, although she's in her mid-30s, she happens to look legitimately 12 years old. Karen, on the other hand, has reached red-hot status and now has found herself a second target.
Unbelievable. I can't believe the disrespect for little kids they let into this store. You are going to help me now, or I report you directly to the owner, who goes to my church.
That's when Boss 2 rounds the corner, witnesses the situation, and immediately figures out what's going on. One thing to know about Boss 2 is that in her physical characteristics, she's pretty much the opposite of Boss 1. She's 6 feet tall. She's very solidly, but physically, she doesn't walk so much as she lumbers. She's ex-military and is fully trained to take charge in a wartime situation. Short version, this woman knows how to effectively take up the ample space she's been given. Bonus points, she's British, and her accent gives her an extra weight of authority when she wants to flex her authority. She wanted to flex her authority. She walks up behind Karen and asks in her best command voice, "Is there a problem here?" Karen takes on a smug facial expression as if to say,
Finally, I found somebody competent.
Then she turns around, takes a look at Boss 2 and her mountainous position directly behind her. I see her face lose its smugness, and the only sound she can manage is a half-surprised, half-terrified squeak. These people have told you already they don't work here. I suggest you walk away right now. Perhaps leave the store before things get a little more uncomfortable for you. Are we in agreement here? Karen starts moving rapidly away in a manner I can only describe as scampering. I suspect she actually did leave the store because her face suggested she was unable to coexist in the same space as her abject embarrassment. And the three of us office types were able to finish our party planning and make it out of the store without further incident. And now my story is all told. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend it was my sister who stole his stuff from him despite my parents' disapproval? I, female 25, have been with my boyfriend, Adam, male 26, for over a year. He's so wonderful and adores my family and loves visiting them regularly. There was an accident about a week ago while me and Adam were visiting my parents for dinner. His stuff, his phone, car keys, medication, and $200 has gone missing. We looked all over the house but couldn't find the stuff. My 18-year-old sister was in her room the entire time except for a few minutes to ask what we were looking for. Me and Adam had to go home in an Uber, still feeling shaken up and confused. Adam kept stressing out about his medication, which is the most valuable among the stuff he lost, and had a hard time getting a replacement for it. I went back to my parents the next day to continue looking for Adam's missing stuff and found it in my sister's room, the only place we didn't look. I was dumbfounded. I waited for her to come back from school and confronted her. My mom started making excuses instead of asking my sister why she took Adam's stuff. I shamed her and said I was going to tell Adam and will absolutely support him if he decides to take legal action since the $200 wasn't returned. Mom freaked out and begged me to lie to Adam and say I found his stuff in the bathroom cabinet instead of saying my sister stole it, but I refused. My sister broke down crying, saying if I tell Adam, I'll ruin her relationship with him, but I believed he needed to know the house he enters isn't safe for him. Mom said she couldn't believe I'm willing to encourage Adam to take legal action and ruin my sister's chance to her college application. My parents said they would cut me off if this happens, and this was the last time we talked. 2 days ago, Adam told me Mom called him saying they found his stuff in the bathroom cabinet and gave it to me, but I was keeping it. I was stunned. Okay, first of all, the stuff is in my possession, yes, but I was waiting on Mom and Dad to pay the $200 so I could have my sister return them to my boyfriend along with the other stuff and apologize, hoping we'd work this out without involving authorities. But Mom went ahead of me and told a story she made up to Adam. I laid out the facts to him and told him what had really happened, that my sister stole his stuff, and that despite being ashamed of my mom and sister, I still gave them the opportunity to resolve this peacefully. Then I told him I support him in whatever decision he makes. Adam was in dismay and very upset. He confronted my parents and they kept denying. Mom was furious. She kept crying, saying I failed to do them this one small favor to tell a white lie to Adam, but I just ruined the entire family's relationship with him, and anything that comes out of this is my fault after making them look like liars and my sister like a vicious thief. My whole family are in conflict and are shaming me for exposing my sister and making a fuss over a small mistake. I haven't seen Adam since the day he found out. Neither parties are happy, and I'm being blamed and accused of escalating things. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her family? Please let us know.
I think Adam needs to get away from all of you lot, to be honest. You should have given him his stuff back and told him what happened as soon as you found out.
This is a reminder that you approved this policy and agreed to abide by it. A similar post got me thinking about my workplace. I work in a combined IT/AV department for a somewhat large organization, so if there are any events going on, we're responsible for setting it up, which usually involves setting up sound systems, projectors, and cameras, and ensuring that when someone plugs in their laptop, it functions as expected. For years, we got a lot of last-minute requests. Some of them were literally along the lines of, "We're having a gathering tomorrow with 300 people. We need audio and projectors set up for 9 a.m. tomorrow and for you to advance the slides for us. Plus, this video in my PowerPoint presentation doesn't work. Can you fix it up? We know you leave for work in half an hour, but can you set it up? We knew about this for weeks, but nobody thought to tell you." So one day we complained to our manager, who agreed it was BS and asked us to draft a policy that he could take to upper management and get them to sign off on it. We did, and it was very straightforward. You need to give at least 5 business days notice for events, presentations, media must be finalized and playable without internet access. One less thing to go wrong. And you're responsible for advancing the slides because we're there to fix computer issues, not read your script and press buttons. Our manager took it to upper management, who agreed it was a good idea, and they signed off on it, and it was distributed to all staff. We had some people slip up, but they were held accountable and promised to not do it again. One day, someone from upper management emailed us. Let's call him Bill. Bill was holding an event for 600 people with a guest speaker who had to be booked weeks in advance. The guest would need their laptop connected to the internet because they had YouTube videos, the projector set up, and wireless microphones set up because they had hand mics around for people to participate. The speaker was due to speak Monday morning, and it was Thursday lunchtime. Plenty of time to set it up, but less than the 5 business days notice. Plus, we were double booked by someone who followed the rules, so we said no, even though he was upper management. Bill was not happy. He demanded to know why we were refusing to set things up when there was at least 12 working hours between now and the event, and all that was required was to power on the projector, turn on the mixer, turn on the microphones, and then set up the person's laptop when they arrived Monday. Our manager heard his complaints and sent him an email. Dear Bill, my team have said no to setting up for this event, and I support their decision. Attached is the policy on event support. This is a reminder that you approved this policy and agreed to abide by it. Attached are general instructions on how to set things up for yourself. Best of luck. Bill managed to run the event without us, but he had to do a lot of running around and had a bunch of technical issues that interrupted the event. But at least he learned that if you sign off on the rules, you need to abide by them, because he hasn't slipped up since. Don't like the raise you got? Go somewhere else. So I previously worked as a customer service rep for a big health insurance company for almost 2 years. It was my first job out of college, so I was just trying to get my feet wet and ultimately move on to something else within the company. I hit my year within the company a couple months after lockdown started and crap hit the fan. Parts of the company go on hiring freezes and the roles available got snatched up very quickly and it was super competitive. I applied to multiple positions and don't even make it to the interview stage. It's alright because I'm thankful for my current role, providing me job security even though the pay is abysmal. Fast forward to early 2021 when our annual review happens. I'm mentally checked out of the role, but still doing extremely well stats/metrics wise, and I'm excited to see how big my raise is. I finally have my review with my manager and get a 4 overall on my review. Reviews are conducted on a scale of 5. Typically, people get 3s, and that's pretty good, but getting a 4 is very, very good, and one would expect a big raise with that. I'm super pumped that I got a 4, and I'm expecting a big raise. And finally, towards the end of my review, we discuss the raise. My manager states that my 4, which again is rare and super good, nets me a 1% raise. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of how much that is exactly because it's rather embarrassing, but let's just say you would barely even see a difference in my paycheck. I was stunned, and I asked my manager how I could get such a small raise with such a good review. My manager says, essentially, something about the budget only allowing me a 1% raise, and if I don't like it, to look for something else. I have to admit, I was slacking on the job search, but that really kicked me into overdrive. 2 weeks after that, I was in the interviewing stages for 3 different roles at the same company, or our sister company, and after a month of that, I got an offer I couldn't refuse. The new position came with a 32% increase in salary, and I couldn't have been happier. I told my boss that I had accepted a new role and mentioned the increase, and my boss was shocked. It was also very inconvenient because I was the most experienced person on the team, so a lot of coworkers would come to me for questions and advice, and I also had been assigned to special projects that I was an expert in, and now they would need to find someone else for that in a short period of time. In conclusion, know your worth and don't settle for less. Won't let me graduate college on time? This happened 7 years ago. Senior year, I realized I could add an anthropology minor to my degree and still graduate in time. I scheduled the appropriate classes to meet this new goal, but a class I needed was canceled at the last minute because of low interest. So I signed up for a bunch of blow-off classes because all I needed were electives for my major. I go through the semester, and every once in a while I get emails about not being scheduled to correctly graduate and that the deadline has already passed to meet these requirements. I replied to these advisors saying I decided not to get my minor and should still be good to go. Eventually, I decide to call and talk to them. Turns out I needed upper level electives, so my Anthropology 101 and Basket Weaving for Idiots 102 did not count for that requirement. I go in to talk to an advisor and talk to them. I ended up getting the assistant dean for this meeting. I asked them why they didn't notify me of the graduation issue sooner before the deadline to add and drop classes. They said that they aren't notified of canceled classes until much later. I asked if I could take some online classes very quickly and graduate on time. She said I could take online classes to fulfill the requirement, but that they have a policy where you cannot graduate the same semester that you take online classes because the grades might not come in on time. I asked them if I can appeal this policy. They said I could, but that I signed this paperwork saying any schedule change must be approved by the dean of my college during my final meeting with my advisor before the last semester, so it was unlikely to be granted. So you're saying that the only thing keeping me from winning an appeal of this policy is the paperwork I signed? Cool. I signed up for 2 senior-level reading and essay intensive history classes. You are allowed to do a maximum of 3 weeks worth of work each week for online classes at this university. I had 9 weeks before the end of the semester, and the shortest window to complete these classes is 6. I wrote an average of 64 pages of essays a week for 6 weeks straight to get done in the 6 weeks. Grades got posted about 1 week before the end of the semester. Cue the malicious compliance. I write my appeal of the policy. I attach a copy of my signed paperwork that says, any schedule change must be approved by a dean of my college. I also point out how assistant dean tells me that they aren't notified of canceled classes. How could this canceled class that initially made me not scheduled correctly to graduate be removed from my schedule without my dean's approval? You, the college, violated this agreement that you had me sign. 1 week later, I was presented with my hand-labeled diploma that was not kept in the alphabetical and printed labeled diplomas of the other graduating students. I squeezed through so late that they couldn't even print a label for the envelope. Always read the wording of the things you sign when trying to get out of them. This agreement simply stated a schedule change, not a schedule change made by me. My phone was stolen and I got it back. I work in a small neighborhood market. I've worked there for 3 years. I'm the woman who calls you honey and will cover you if you're short. I've even used tip money to buy a pack of cigarettes or a couple of beers for my favorite regulars if they don't have any money. Needless to say, I am adored. I set my phone down on the counter after sending a text and went to help a customer. I got busy, so I forgot about it. This is a year-old Android phone. It isn't worth all that much, but I collect screenshots. I have over 5,000 on this phone, and they mean the world to me. My books, phone numbers, and Reddit account are all recoverable, but my beloved screenshots are not. A little later, I went to grab my phone, and it was gone. I looked everywhere, and my son, who was there with me, looked too. I called the boss's daughter and asked if she would come down and look at the cameras, and she said yes. Freaking out, I went to help a customer at the window. He's a well-known neighborhood criminal, but I'm cool with him because why not? He's a nice enough guy. I've even chatted with him when he rode past my house and I was sitting on my porch. I told him my phone was stolen, and he said, I know exactly who has it. He's trying to sell it for $30. I told him if he could get it back for me, I would buy him a pack of cigarettes every week for a month. He left, and 10 minutes later, the man I thought might have done it came walking in saying, I found this phone sitting outside. Funny, because my son and my boyfriend were sitting outside, and wouldn't they have seen it? The boss's daughter would not confirm who it was. She called her mom and told her, so the boss lady is going to handle it. But I know enough of people in the neighborhood who I've helped out in the past won't let him get away with it. Also, yes, I know it is completely my fault. My boss is always telling me to hide it under the counter and stop trusting people. Mop your own floor. I am a general contractor and was one in New York City for almost 10 years. We had these nightmare clients that were the worst of the worst. Every one of my fellow general contractors would say, oh yeah, I had a client like that, until they heard stories from me and realized these guys were one of a kind. The clients begged to move in. We weren't ready, but agreed if they understood that we would still be doing final touch-ups, etc. They swore they understood and were so grateful. right up until moving day, then they treated us like the help. We would get calls at all hours of non-urgent items like, "There's a paint touch-up needed in our guest closet. Can you send someone now? My mother is coming to stay this weekend and can't see that." The story. Long after we were finished in the main house, we were doing periodic work in the guest apartment. I say this just to clear up. We hadn't been in their house for almost a month, nor had any of the work we had done been dusty or dirty. One Saturday around 11 a.m., I get a text. He was notorious for texting after being told not to after hours unless it was an emergency. Entitled guy.
Hey man, I know you don't want to hear this right now, but I'm walking around the house barefoot and I just noticed the bottoms of my feet have dust on them and are a little dirty, so you're going to have to come mop the floor. We have guests coming in at 1 p.m. for lunch, so it needs to be before then with enough time to dry. So, like now.
Me. Hey mate, just to be clear, you're asking me to send someone to your house to mop your floor? We haven't caused that dust. Your cleaner was there yesterday. So even if we did cause it, at some point she was there between the last time we were there and now. Entitled guy.
Well, it's dirty and it's your dirt, so you need to send someone.
Me. Listen, it's not our obligation to do that. We won't be coming to do that. This, once again, is not a reasonable request, and I've asked you not to contact me or my staff on weekends as it's family time and we take that seriously. Entitled guy calls me on the phone.
Are you serious? My floor is filthy right now and I have guests coming.
Me. Mate, we didn't do it. We're not cleaners. We're not available. We're not coming.
This is ridiculous. We've sacrificed so much for you guys.
They hadn't, but always said this.
And I need this one
It was like this 3 times a day most days.
thing, and you always push back.
Me. Mate, you're a healthy 41-year-old man. Mop your own floor.
But,
Bye, mate. Weirdest thing about these clients is they would yell at you and act like this, and then the next time we saw each other, it wasn't a thing. I learned over time that they just existed like this. They spent their whole lives speaking to people like garbage, so that interaction for them was just a normal request, whereas to me or any other respectful human, this was huge disrespect. These people could fill this sub for a week. Let me know if you want more. Karen gets jealous of my dress and dumps a milkshake on me. Me, my husband, and our 15-year-old daughter, Georgia, went to my sister's place for lunch this weekend. Georgia is very bright. She completed her exams early and is now studying more advanced material. She's a big fashionista, a lot more than I was at that age. She loves pretty clothes and outfits, and we're happy to get her as much as we can, provided she behaves well and keeps up the good grades. The lunch with my sister was fairly casual, but Georgia wore her new pink dress. My sister isn't as well off as we are, unfortunately. She's raising her 3 kids on her own, and her job isn't a high-paying one. In the past, she asked me if Georgia could tone down her outfits when we come to visit because she doesn't want her kids being upset because they can't afford things like that. I do get my sister's point, but it's not down to me to police what Georgia wears. I have spoken to Georgia about it, but I left the final decision to her. Anyway, so we went for lunch, and Georgia ended up getting into an argument when my sister's 13-year-old, Lucy, asked about the dress and where it was from. Georgia answered that it didn't matter because Lucy couldn't afford it anyway. We told Georgia to shut up as soon as the comment left her lips, but it soon ended with Georgia and Lucy screaming at each other. My sister made the kids vanilla milkshakes, and Lucy decided to throw hers all over Georgia, ruining the dress. Georgia burst into tears, and to be fair, my sister did bring her a change of clothes. I said that if the dress was permanently ruined, I wanted my sister to reimburse us. My sister has refused and said that it was our responsibility because my daughter wore an expensive dress, despite being warned not to. That dress cost a couple of $100, and washing it has failed to completely remove the stains. Frankly, I don't care about my sister's warnings. We can't make Georgia wear what she doesn't want to, and it's not our problem that she can't control her kid and stop her from ruining a beautiful dress. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
It doesn't matter because your family can't afford it? And you people call me entitled.
If you give me your keys, I'm going to toss them in the gutter. This happened about 16 to 17 years ago, when I was in my late 20s. Now, one thing I know about myself is that I'm a babyface. Even now at 44, I'm tall and I have an athletic build, so I get mistaken for a young 20-something all the time. So you can imagine what I looked like at the age of 27 or 28. Now couple that with the fact that I'm a black man, relevant later, and you can just imagine what my life has been like. So my team was having a retirement celebration for our manager, and we had a dinner party at a restaurant near our workplace after hours. The shindig ended up being about 25 to 30 people, mostly older. I think I was one of 2 or 3 people under the age of 40, and it was nice. Our manager shed a tear or two, gave a nice speech, blah blah blah, etc. The restaurant was open for business, and there were other small parties, couples, etc. there, and they ignored us and we ignored them. But we weren't segregated. We were seated towards the center of the seating area around a large table and a second smaller one. So fast forward to the end of the dinner, and we're all outside now, saying our final goodbyes, and on the verge of dispersing, and I was among the group. So a few people start to make their way home, and our group is now whittled down to about 10 to 12 people. Other patrons and pedestrians are coming and going like normal, and there we are just chatting amongst ourselves. Notably, our manager was still there with his plaque, a relatively large picture frame, and a couple of gift bags. So again, it should have been evident to anybody who was in the restaurant for the last hour who we were. You would think. And then it happens. I'll call her Pre-Karen, since this was before people like her were a meme. Karen.
Excuse me?
Me. Yes, ma'am? Karen.
Here are my keys.
For?
For you to get my car.
Me. I'm sorry, I don't work here, ma'am.
I don't have time for games. Here are my keys.
As she's saying this, she tries to stuff her keys in my hand. Now I'm upset. Me. If you put your keys in my hand, I'm going to throw them across the street and into the gutter.
Then why do you have a badge on?
As she's saying this, she reaches out to grab my badge. What the heck? Which was on a lanyard hanging around my neck, around my midsection. But before she could, I snatched it away. Me. If you touch me again, I will consider it assault and call the police. I don't work here. She withdraws her hand, and I release my badge, which she proceeds to study for the 2 or so seconds it would take to figure out it's not a restaurant or valet badge. I believe the restaurant contracts out their valet service, and having done valet work during college, I'm fairly certain my business attire does not in any way resemble the uniforms. Think tacky vest with logo and matching pants, or the 2 or 3 companies that are in my area. And furthermore, none of them do badges on lanyards. Then she looks me up and down, comes back to lock eyes with me, and while starting to turn away, utters that word. You know which one, under her breath. Not gonna lie, it caught me off guard, and in the 15 years since, I've thought of the perfect comeback more times than I cared to admit, the other story of my life. But on the bright side, I'm prepared now. But in that moment, I simply couldn't force words to come out of my mouth. So I just turned around and tried to shake off my shock and anger and proceed as if everything was fine. Most of the remaining coworker group, a mix of black and white, was aware of what had just transpired. But there was nothing to be said or done really. So we just kind of started small talking again. Client tried to do me over by locking me out of my own system. I've worked as an independent contractor in the IT field for over 20 years, doing all manner of things from creating simple HTML sites to managing a big hotel's complete IT infrastructure. One of the many clients I had back in the day I was coding big custom websites was a rental company. Now, I had heard a lot of warnings about not working with this guy that owned it. He had a reputation that he was sharp as a tack, backstabbing and conniving. He was a lawyer after all. So I went into the partnership with that in mind. He wanted a new website for his renting gig where people would list their home for rent, renters would sign up and pay a subscription to the site, and he would get the whole lot. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So we make a pretty good deal on paper, we sign it, and I get started on the project. Coding everything in PHP goes well, but he demands suddenly that I show him progress only a week into the progress. He wants to see the website front now. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I tried explaining to him that the front-end work isn't scheduled to start until after 6 weeks of back-end programming, and that I only had pure code to show right now. The contract we signed clearly states this. He then gets on his high horse and demands that I put everything on hold to do the front-end first, design and then program. I, being really young at the time and fairly naive, agreed to this without asking for it to be added to the contract as an addendum and started working on the design now. Now, the contract stated I was given free reign of the design decisions, as long as I maintained the same color scheme and used the same logo on the site. So I made a fast draft in Fireworks. This was back when it was a macro media product, before the Adobe acquisition, and within 2 days I show him. He's not impressed and demands a different direction and sets up a list of demands. I, as always, aim to please the customer and do just what he wants. I design a new layout with his list of demands, but he doesn't like that either. That's how the next 3 months go, a never-ending circle where he is never happy with anything. Now, close to 4 months into the project, he demands to see a working showcase of the back end. I point out that he himself changed the order and how the project was being done and had demanded that I do the front-end design first instead of the back end as stated in the contract, which he now turns on me and says,
Yes, the contract we both signed says you will have a working back end to show me at the end of the month. If you don't honor that, I will have to take my business elsewhere and seek compensation for your lack of professionalism.
Okay, I now have 12 days to do a back end for the site. So I get a friend to help me, and we work tirelessly through a weekend, and I have a good base to work from in 9 days. Mind you, at this point, he has only paid the security on the contract, about 5% of the total price, and has shielded himself from paying by hiding behind,
Well, if you can't honor the contract, why should I? Finish this work, and then I'll pay as per the contract.
Remembering now all the warnings I had heard about this guy, I decided to add a special function to the code just to be safe. More on that later. So now it's the end of the month. We have a front-end design he's okay with, a back-end that has been finished to about 85% of what is required according to the contract, and I still have 1 month left to finish everything else. Time for show and tell. Since I was working on this development, I was running it on my own dev server and showed him this in a browser on his computer. I mentioned to him that since I only had 512 kilobytes upstream from the server, it might lag a little, but it wouldn't when it would be put on the professional server he has his website on at his hosting company. He says that's okay, and the demonstration goes on. As I'm showing him the site, both front-end and back-end, I can see he's immensely unhappy with it, although he would never say so aloud. He's trying to hide his smile that pops up regularly, and his eyes gleam with all of the added ways he can now start making money from. Anyway, he now says that it's way too slow, this is wrong, that is wrong, blah blah blah. Client:
I want you to put it up on my production server and see how the speed is.
Me: okay, no problem, I can make that happen. Please pay 50% of the contract and I'll get right on it. Okay, I wait a few days and then I get an email from him where he includes a forwarded message from the bank detailing a transaction from him to me to the amount of the 50% I asked for. So I push the system to his production server so he can take a look at it under beta.hisdomain.tld. I then send him an email stating he can try the system with the supplied credentials. What he doesn't know is that I know he had been fishing around for another programmer to do this project to pick up from a lazy deadbeat who couldn't do anything right. So I knew he would most likely try to do me over. What I also suspected was that the email he sent me with a transaction proof was a fake, which it ended up being. Pro-Revenge 1. Remember that small function I mentioned? Well, what it did was if user X, his user, tries to remove user Y, my admin, from the system without one setting being changed in the config first, the system will first delete and purge the database, and then remove all the documents in the web root. Well, not 5 minutes after he reads the email from me, he does just that. He tries to delete my admin user from the system to lock me out. Guess who has nothing of the project left? He does. Pro-Revenge 2. Since it is considered forgery to spoof an email, especially from a bank, I sent the information to the authorities and he goes under investigation by both the police and the bank lawyers. Pro-Revenge 3. I sold the system to a competitor of his for a better price than originally contracted to him, and last I knew, he was now blacklisted from owning a company as well as he lost his right to work as a lawyer. I only got that 5% he paid at the beginning, and for working for just over 5 months on this project, that's hardly anything. But the knowledge of his demise will keep my heart warm for the rest of my life. Karen demands I babysit the entire neighborhood for free. Back when I was a kid, my uncle married a woman I despised. She was a manipulator, social climber, and an all-around gross person. She had 2 sons from a previous marriage. At the time of this story, I was 14, and the boys, who were horrendously behaved, were 6 and 8. I had sworn off babysitting them because they would try to hurt me, and she refused to pay me. But I made an exception this one time because due to some issues they had going on, I felt sad for their family. So I said I would do it for free just this once. They lived in one of those neighborhoods where your neighbors just walk in your house and say hi and kids roam freely. Basically one of my versions of heck, but I digress. There was a crazy neighbor that lived across the street that kind of scared me. She is what we now know as a Karen. Well, Karen's 2 kids, ages roughly 4 and 8, show up in the yard while I'm watching my cousins. The boy starts climbing the tree and dangling from tall branches while I begged him to get down and told him that it wasn't safe. I knew Karen enough to know that if he fell out of the tree, I was going to get it. The boy refused and climbed higher and higher, so I said he needed to go home, but he wouldn't. I said fine, but my cousins and I were going in because I would not be responsible. He tried to follow us in, and I had to lock the doors. About 15 minutes later, Karen comes pounding on the door, screaming at me to get out there. So I go out, afraid the boy had gone back in the tree and had gotten hurt. But no, she was livid I wouldn't babysit her kids. She got right in my face, to the point I could smell the box wine on her breath, and screamed how if one neighbor has a babysitter, the whole neighborhood has one, and that's how things are done there. I calmly said I wasn't even getting paid, but if they want to organize group babysitting, call someone else, because I was 14 and too young to do it. I told my uncle's wife what happened when they got home, and she took her turn yelling at me and accused me of trying to ruin her friendship with Karen. My uncle just stood there. When my dad picked me up, I waited until we got home to tell him what happened, and he called my uncle in a rage. But my uncle agreed I should have babysit his stepkids, Karen's kids, plus the other 3 kids that were there, but not causing trouble. I never babysat for them again, and several years later, the marriage ended in divorce when my uncle took one of the kids to the park and found her on a date with one of her boyfriends. Would you ever babysit your cousins for free, or not in a million years? Please let us know.
Time is money, friend.
Am I the jerk for asking my neighbors to stop putting signs in my yard? Some backstory. I live in a corner lot. On one side, it's a neighborhood road, and the other side is a big old public road. Part of my property has several easements, and it's easy to mistake these areas as common areas, but it's all actually private property. The amount of people who assume they can use these areas of my land is mind-boggling. Every weekend, there are at least 2 to 3 signs in my yard. Spa sale, show, real estate XYZ, moving sale, you name it. Not only do I find them trashy personally, but they're illegal per city regulation. Illegal in public right-of-way, permit required, or landowner permission required. People also sometimes think they're my signs, where I have to stop and explain yet again to a random garage sale chaser that it's not my sale, or to city police code enforcement. The story. I removed yet another moving sale sign and thought nothing of it until I came out the next morning to another one, this time placed further into my yard, and a suspicious, angry-looking dude sitting in his car across the street. Closer inspection revealed a small note at the bottom that the HOA approved the sign and not to remove it. Signed, a board member. Just like that. No name, phone number, just a board member. As I removed the sign, suspicious guy turned on his car and sped off into our neighborhood. Then, for the next couple of hours or so, the same guy/car would repeatedly do slow drives by the front side of the house where I was working, glaring at me. So obviously, it was his sign. Now, I've been confronted, but I've never had anyone do anything like this before. So I decided to end it by returning the last sign and explaining why I was removing them, and proceeding to do exactly that. I walked until I saw the yard sale, asked if this was their sign, then calmly explained that it was a frequent error for people to assume it was open space, but it was actually my property and the city will fine me for having temporary signs in my yard. Please stop putting them there, yada yada yada. As I'm turning to walk away, the guy from the car goes, "It's actually HOA property." Like he didn't listen to a thing I just said. So I assured him it was most certainly not HOA property. It was mine, and he can verify that with the county assessor's office if he were so inclined. I go to walk away again, and now the lady, the board member, is chastising me too for removing her sign, for not coming to talk to her, both of which I was technically doing. My actions are completely unacceptable. This isn't how you behave. Absolutely no recognition for either her or her husband's behavior. Anyways, the HOA is involved now, and they're all acting like I'm a huge jerk. I just don't get it.
This is my property. Just stay off of it, right? Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you let them put the signs in your yard or not? Please let us know.
I'd spray paint them and turn them into bright, beautiful rainbows. My property, my rules.
Yes, I do work here, and I'm your new manager. In 2016, I was the new girl once again. We moved every few years of my childhood. I was in a new marriage, in a new state, and had just landed a new job as a pool manager for the local YMCA. I knew nobody. I had just renewed my certifications and was to sit in on the lifeguard training classes leading up to summer hiring. In order to get the Con Ed hours I needed for my lifeguard instructor certification renewal. Day 1 of class rolled around, and the room quickly filled with 16, 17, and 18-year-old high schoolers. They were all chatting away happily, comparing notes about prom dresses and upcoming graduation parties, who just gotten their driver's licenses, and more. I sat at the end of a U-shaped table, waiting for the lead instructor to arrive. A cute, bubbly girl sat down right next to me and asked me questions about myself. She figured out I'd just moved to town and was elated. She'd met a new friend that she could show around, as far as she was concerned. I listened intently as she told me which mall was trash and which movie theater had the best prices, and then she asked me which school I went to. It was in that moment that I finally realized she thought I was her age. I was 26 at the time. I'm a redhead with pale skin and freckles and only look almost my age if I'm wearing makeup, which I never did to the pool. I answered her, "Oh, I actually just enrolled at name of college, and I'm taking a full course load on top of this job." She excitedly told me she was also taking college courses on top of her high school classes and was set to graduate high school early. She was a junior and 17. I thought about telling her the truth, but the lead instructor walked in right at that moment. I let him quiet the class and introduce himself, and right on cue, he asked me to come to the front of the room to introduce myself as well. "Hi y'all, my name is Foxy Freckles, and I'll be managing the pool this summer. I'll also be helping to certify you as lifeguards." Then we had each teen introduce themselves and played an icebreaker game. I looked at my employee roster and realized the bubbly girl would be working at my pool. The sweet girl recovered so quickly. I sat back down next to her and she leaned over and whispered, "OMG, I hope I look half as good as you do when I'm old." I laughed and thanked her and then informed her that she'd be working for me that season. She looked momentarily embarrassed, but told me she couldn't wait. She ended up being one of my best guards that season, and I still keep up with her and give her references for new jobs almost 7 years later. She just graduated nursing school and is about to have a baby. I'm so proud of her, and it's a fond memory for sure. Apparently, I'm selfish because I won't refer my immature adult cousin who can't keep a job to the place I work at. My cousin is 22. I'm 25. My cousin hasn't worked since September of 2019 when she got fired from her last job, which is the one I was working at and referred her to. She got fired for dumping bottles of fart spray in the elevator, mouthing off to everyone, loudly complaining how she hates the job and her boss, taking long breaks, and not doing her work properly. I quit my job shortly after she got fired because it looked bad on me and I was embarrassed. Everyone knew she was my cousin because she went around showing pictures of us together and telling embarrassing made-up things about me. She also told everyone off on her way out of that job and told me off for recommending this place in front of everyone. Anyways, I think she started working in 2017 and she hasn't been able to keep any job she's had for longer than 2 months, sometimes less than that. She got fired from all of them. I know she got fired from one of the jobs because she was drinking in the break room. She posted all about it online, and another one she got caught hooking up with her coworker who was dating another coworker at the time and they got into a fight. Another one, she hated this girl she worked with, so she was spreading rumors about her and trying to get her in trouble. Just a bunch of immature crap. I want to say she has probably gone through around 14 or 15 different jobs, and she wonders why people won't hire her. Let's see. No references or prior places you worked at because you won't list them. You're 22 years old with no resume or anything. I currently work as a CNA at a retirement center. I've been working here for about a year now. My job has radio ads out there claiming they're hiring for servers or hospitality aides, which require no experience, and I guess my aunt wants my cousin to get a job because she's sick of paying for her. My cousin has been applying for a few months but hasn't had many callbacks. Gee, I wonder why. Anyways, my aunt suggested to my mom that I refer her to my workplace because I got her a job before. My mom brought this up to me, and I refuse. Knowing how she's previously acted, no way. It will look bad on me if she does something, and I will have to find another job. My mom got mad and told me to call my aunt and explain why I won't help family members out. I called my aunt and told her I'm sorry she can't find a job, but I'm not referring her. Not after what she did last time. It will look bad on me. She can apply if she wants, but I'm not referring her. My aunt called me selfish because she's family. And yeah, she messed up, but she's matured and she deserves another chance to work like everybody else. I said, okay, then she can go to their website and apply. And my aunt said she's more likely to get the job if a family member refers her. It's not all about you. Your cousin needs a job too. I said, I never said it was all about me, but I have a job to maintain too. My aunt told me to get over myself, let go of the grudge, and that was 8 years ago. Since when is 2019 years ago? And she said my cousin can't find a job and she's applied to so many. And I said that's not my problem and hung up. She left me a nasty voicemail saying she can't believe she's related to me and that I'm treating her so poorly. She's been nothing but nice to me, yada yada. Then she called my mom and started yelling at her about how rude and inconsiderate I was being, and my mom yelled at me. I just left for work and I'm getting angry texts from my mom. I'm at a Starbucks typing this. It's not my fault she ruined every single job she's had by doing something immature and stupid at it. I don't know why she won't grow up or take accountability for anything, and I'm not buying the "oh, she's matured" thing my aunt said because she causes drama all the time on Instagram and makes everything about her. She hasn't matured. That's a lie. Why is it my responsibility to get her hired somewhere? Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you go ahead and refer your cousin or not? Please let us know.
I'd cut her out of my life is what I'd do. Whether or not you're related to them is completely irrelevant.
Am I the jerk for telling my wife that what my son earns is none of her concern? I'm the father of two, Tom, who's 26, and stepdaughter, Judy, who's 22. Tom has a good paying job, while Judy is still studying. They're both engaged to their partners, and the family are expecting 2 weddings this summer. Tom started his wedding planning, and he spent quite a lot of money on it. He and fiancé chose a nice venue, afford to invite many guests, and add more food options. My wife told me Judy said her stepbrother showed her the expensive venue he and his fiancé picked, and Judy thought it wasn't fair that Tom spent that much on just the venue while she and her fiancé are struggling to save up for their entire wedding. I asked my wife what that means, and she told me to think about it this way. Both Tom and Judy are getting married this summer. People, our families, will attend Tom's wedding and say it was great, but then attend Judy's wedding 3 months later and will say, unlike her stepbrothers, her wedding is cheap, with no great venue or quality food, and not a lot of guests to afford. Basically, comparing the two and gossiping about Judy's wedding. I said all weddings are different. Who is going to compare 2 weddings? Who does that? She told me family and friends. She said that perhaps Tom could help his sister with money to afford a decent wedding, if not equal. I laughed it off and said this is not a competition, and weddings are supposed to be about the couples only, not what people think. But she said Judy feels like her wedding will be less than compared to Tom's. She said we've raised both kids equal and gave them everything equal. We can't just ruin it now and cause drama. Then brought up that Tom earns a lot of money, so no harm in helping his sister by funding some of her wedding. I told her what my son earns is none of her concern, that's it. And even if he earns a lot, doesn't mean he's obligated to fund other people's weddings. It's absurd. She took this as in I was being passive-aggressive and should always be encouraging Tom and Judy to help one another. Fine, but there's a difference between encouraging and pressuring one into helping the other. If this was an emergency, then yes, I'd bring it up to him, still expecting a no. But to ask him to pitch in his sister's wedding? That's overstepping the line. I frankly said I won't even bother my busy son with this non-issue, but she got mad that I'm not even considering talking to him and making a bit of effort to make Judy feel less strained and more supported in her wedding. I said no, and she got extremely upset and agitated, saying I'm the one refusing to help, not Tom, and that he's an adult and can decide if he wants to help. But she's asking me to talk to him, which I'm not going to do. We're still arguing about it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
This is why you never marry a Karen, nor do you raise one. Double toil and trouble right here.
Am I the jerk for kicking my roommate out because her boyfriend is over all the time? I'm extremely unsure whether I am the jerk here or not. Usually I'm rather secure in my actions, but given the current situation around the world and the reason, or lack thereof, I wanted to see if I am the jerk here.
I managed to buy my own apartment 4 years ago. After living there for about a year, I figured it would be a good idea to rake in some extra cash by renting out one of the 2 guest rooms. Since then, I have had 2 roommates, but the first guy was an amazing dude and we're still friends now. A year ago, my now roommate moved in, and it has been a very different experience. She is a very quiet person when she doesn't have friends over, so it has proven impossible to become friends due to this, and it is a bit awkward for that reason. I mean, it took several months for her to respond normally to me saying good morning instead of with an incoherent whisper. Regardless, I have not had many issues with her apart from that, until about 3 months ago. Roommate got a boyfriend, and he was around all the time. At first, I just figured he was sleeping over here, and that's reasonable for any couple. My girlfriend sleeps over now and again too, but it quickly went to the level of where I would wake up to get my coffee, and this dude was there every morning, midday, and evening. It doesn't help that this dude is even more awkward to be around, and if you can remember the creepy silent kid in the corner of the class that follows you with his or her eyes all the time but says nothing back in high school, that's pretty much him. I spoke to her about this, and she said she was sorry and would handle it, so I figured that would solve it. Well, I went to visit my parents for 2 weeks a little over 2 months ago. I couldn't get the holiday off, so I figured this was better than nothing. No worries, it was allowed here. And when I got home, I come back to 3 people. Turns out that my roommate had been allowing her boyfriend's parents to sleep in the guest room. Now the guest room is not part of the agreement. It's entirely mine and not a shared space. You can imagine I was upset. Unfortunately, instead of apologizing, her boyfriend got angry and started yelling at me, after which I kicked him and his parents out, told him he was no longer welcome. The next day I served my roommate with a 30-day eviction notice, which was the first time she showed emotion as she immediately started crying about how she wouldn't be able to find anything else in time, how the reason her boyfriend was over here a lot was because he's homeless, etc. Crap went through and she moved out 3 weeks ago. I'm wondering whether I'm the jerk or not. It does feel similar to throwing out a shirt with a stain instead of washing it. In other words, I can't help but feel I didn't give her enough of a chance given she barely caused any issues apart from very recently, and the reason for kicking her out was largely because of her boyfriend, not her. Well, what do you think? Should OP have kicked out his roommate or not? Please let us know.
I don't blame him one bit. Nothing irks me more than quiet people who just stare at me.
Greedy Karen at my wedding eats our pasta salad out of the serving container, gets kicked out. We got married recently, and I wanted something super laid back and casual. I hate a lot of stuff about wedding culture, so we decided to get married by a forest on some land that my granddad owns. It turned out pretty good, except the heat wave. We're going through a heat wave right now. But I was a little worried about my husband's side of the family complaining. They have more money than my side and are used to nicer things. Mother-in-law complained about having to bring her own chair or blanket, but my husband shut that down immediately. Our rule was no set guest list. I didn't care if extra people came, as long as they brought food and drinks. It was a potluck, and we asked for food instead of gifts. The more food, the more tag-alongs you can bring. Mother-in-law gave us a gift card to a grocery store for a couple hundred, brought a couple boxes of desserts from a local bakery, and brought a giant vat of this amazing pasta salad she makes, so she was totally in the clear to bring some people. She came over with her boyfriend, his brother, who was in town visiting, brother's wife, and a friend. When mother-in-law got there, she asked my mom about where to put stuff and wasn't happy with our accommodations. Mother-in-law thought it was unsanitary that we had no way of keeping food cold, but my mom told her it would be an hour at the most and it was fine. Mother-in-law also claims there were flies getting into other people's food, but I was getting dressed and didn't see that. Now for some background. This pasta salad mother-in-law makes is one of my favorite things in the world. During the ceremony, I looked over and her boyfriend and her friend were eating some of the pasta salad out of the container. That is unsanitary, obviously, so I confronted them right after, and her boyfriend said he really wanted some of the pasta salad and didn't want to die after leaving it in the provided conditions. Now her boyfriend is typically a drama queen, so I wasn't surprised, but angry and disappointed. I said since bringing people was linked to bringing food, the two of them had to leave because they took away from the food supply. Mother-in-law got mad and said I was ruining her son's wedding for her. They ended up not leaving because my granddad wouldn't kick them out. My mom even took mother-in-law's side and said that I was causing a scene. There is still annoyance on both ends, so I just wanted some clarity. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
I think OP just likes her pasta salad. Nothing wrong with that. You touch my pasta salad, I'd do much worse.
The worst camping trip ever with my entitled nieces from heck. Warning, this will infuriate you. I left for a camping trip this morning with my nieces and my daughters. My daughters are 3 and 5. My nieces are 6, 8, 14, and 16. My sister lives 3 hours away and drove them to my house last night so we could leave early this morning. We are an hour away from my house. The trip was supposed to be until Saturday. The 14 and 16-year-olds haven't been listening at all. They feed off of each other. They've been talking back to me non-stop. They swear at me, give me an attitude. This is mainly about them. When we got here, I told them to watch the younger kids while I set up the camper, picnic table, and chairs. They took my kids to the rocky part of the river nearby and they were swimming in it. They were not watching the younger ones, but splashing around with each other. I had to go get the younger ones and they couldn't understand why I would be upset. This was for about 5 minutes, but in that 5 minutes, someone could have been hurt. I told them this, and they said, "Then why don't you watch them?" and walked away laughing. They were making TikToks for a while and dancing in ways they shouldn't have been. Got my daughters involved when I specifically said I didn't want them posted online. They refused to delete the videos and told me it's their TikToks and they can post what they want. I've also seen them take pictures and videos of me when they think I can't see them, and they're laughing about it. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm also on TikTok. Then they took the younger ones for a walk around the campsite while I made lunch. They tipped over empty porta potties. My 5-year-old told me about it. Loudly yelled things they had no business saying, had the younger ones doing it too, just being obnoxious. They also were littering and left their gum wrappers wherever they were standing and threw their empty soda bottles in the woods. Took them mini golfing this afternoon. They broke the golf clubs on purpose and threw them into the woods and thought that it was hilarious and called it ghetto golf. Making TikToks, laughing about it. I had to pay for them breaking the golf clubs. They didn't care. Swimming was a mistake too, since they kept purposely splashing the younger ones in the face. Dinner was a disaster, since they were making jokes they shouldn't have been with the hot dogs, and lied about going to the bathroom and took the ketchup bottle with them and sprayed it on the side of my camper. They refused to wipe it off, so I had to do it. They were singing inappropriate rap songs when I tried to have a campfire, and when I told them to stop, they mocked me and continued. They lied about leaving their bug spray in the camper and took their s'mores and smeared it on the inside of my blanket, which I found out about later, and dug their feet into my mattress and left holes in it and put chewed gum onto the back of the door. They wanted to go to the park after dinner, and I went with them. They wouldn't let the younger ones have a turn on the swings and tried to kick me when I told them to give them a turn. We have been in this camper trying to sleep for the last 2 hours, and it's been heck. It feels like I'm in a boat, and these two won't stop moving around. They keep taking the lantern and going to the bathroom, coming back, giggling, making fart noises, fake loud snoring, and trying to scare the younger ones by saying they saw a pack of bears outside the camper, and now they're scared to sleep. Those two think it's hilarious and already told me they aren't sleeping tonight, and they'll stay up all night and I have to deal with it. I told them, keep it up and you're going back home tonight. I'm not putting up with this for the rest of the week, and they just laughed and told me to go forget myself and cry about it. So I just called my sister and told her that she needs to come pick her kids up tonight. We are coming back tonight. The 14 and 16-year-old are not listening to me at all, destroying my camper and teaching my kids bad things. It's a shame I have to cut this short, but I refuse to put up with this crap for the rest of the week. The two overheard me call their mom and say, "You're wasting your time. She doesn't care what we do. You should know this by now. We can do whatever we want and we get whatever we want." And they started laughing. Sister got mad at me and told me she drove 3 hours to drop them off yesterday, and I'm out of my mind if I think she's driving 3 hours to pick them up tonight or tomorrow. I said, well, we are coming back tonight. She told me there's nothing wrong with her kids, they're just teenagers having fun, and told me to drive them back to her house if I have such a problem with them. At this point, I might just do that. Drop them off and leave. Ignore my sister for a while. I don't know why she's mad at me when it's her kids that are acting like jerks and ruining this trip for everyone. But I'm the bad guy? If I would have known they were going to act like this, I wouldn't have invited them on the trip to begin with. I haven't seen them in months and thought it would be a nice gesture to take them all camping. Update. After I posted on here last night, around midnight, I contacted my husband. He gets off work around then, and told him everything they did, and he told me to drive them all home. He did not want any of them back at our house, so that's what I did. Of course, I got attitude from the 14 and 16-year-old for calling my husband. "Oh, you called your husband because you can't handle us?" Followed by laughter and other smarty remarks. I grabbed everything that was outside and threw it in the camper. Told all the girls to grab their stuff and get in the van and that I'm not playing games. I will leave whoever doesn't get in this van here in the next 10 seconds. Connected the camper to the van and started driving. On the way back, I smelled strong onions. Neither of them brought or wore deodorant. Pretty sure it was on purpose. They thought it was hilarious that they stunk, as usual. Out of curiosity, I asked if they were planning on showering at all while camping and if they brought soap with them. They said no because they like watching me gag and laughed. I had all the windows in the van open until it started to rain halfway through the trip. When the rain stopped, the windows opened right back up. We made one bathroom/gas stop about an hour into the drive. I pumped gas and told them to take everyone to the bathroom while I did that. After we left, I found out they decided to clog the toilets in the bathroom. They were laughing and watching the TikTok videos they made of them doing. Man, these kids are bad. They were laughing and watching the TikTok videos they made of them doing it. The older two were whispering and laughing in the back seat almost the entire trip, playing inappropriate music, yelling random crap out of the windows, sticking their heads out of the windows, keeping the younger ones awake, shining their phone flashlights at everyone. I kept seeing them sit backwards in my rear view with their feet up, making footprints on the back of the seats or sticking out the window. I was about ready to drop them off on the side of the road. Ended up getting to their house around almost 4. When I went to the front door, it was unlocked. The kids went inside and I did as well, because I wanted to talk to my sister. Sister was on the couch with her boyfriend and I told her what her kids did and she started laughing. She said that's not the worst they've done. She then started going on and on, telling me all about them destroying furniture around the house, bullying girls in their grades, making false harassment claims against people at school, making fake accounts of other girls. They both get bad grades themselves. They don't care about school and haven't in years. They broke their younger siblings' toys on purpose. They got kicked out of their local mall for sitting on the escalator railing, drinking and posting it on TikTok. Videos of them mouthing off to the neighbors, just a bunch of crazy stuff. The girls were laughing when she was talking about how bad they were. I asked her why she doesn't discipline them. She said, with an attitude,
"You try living with them and you'll see. Nothing phases them."
And then she asked me how much money does she owe me. I gave her the receipt for the golf clubs, the cost of a new mattress and blanket. She wrote a check and said here. She then told me I need to leave because she wants to go to bed and she got back under her blanket on the couch. So I left, and on my way out, the girls took pictures of me and ran upstairs giggling. I got back home around 8:30 this morning. They left footprints on the back seat of my van, chewed gum and boogers on the door and goldfish crumbs smeared in the seats. My husband cleaned out the vehicle while I slept, and I'm back up, dealing with nasty texts from my sister, her accusing me of mistreating them. She said they told her I had spit at them and done all kinds of crazy stuff I shouldn't have been doing, threatened them and kept yelling at them. I did yell at them, but I did not do any of this other stuff. I just blocked my sister because I'm done dealing with this. She has some nerve, knowing how they behave, to accuse me of anything. I'm over it. If she wants to side with their lies and continue living in a circus, that's on her. I don't know why she gave me an attitude after I asked her why she doesn't discipline them, because they need to be disciplined. They are out of control. She thought it was funny how her kids act. All I'm saying is, my kids will never act like that. Yes, they are young right now, but I will never put up with that behavior. I honestly don't even want my kids around her kids anymore, and I'm glad we live far enough from her that we rarely see them as is. I tried to be nice, and this is what I get. Never again. Have you ever had any relatives who acted like this? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
"I've got a husband who does. You act all nice on YouTube, but I know your true colors, Reddit boy."
Not pay me for the website I built? Say goodbye to your business, house, and reputation. This happened early 2000s. I used to be a freelance front-end dev and a search engine optimization guru. Back then, getting on the front page of Google was pretty simple. Link exchanging was popular, but risky. I never did that, but I did have a single website that had serious PageRank clout due to it being linked as a trusted source, directly from one of the top and most trusted websites in the world. I would use this website for the best clients to get their PageRank and search engine position leapfrogging other, older, and more trusted websites. One day, I was approached by someone I'll call Bob. Now, Bob sold travel packages. He needed to revamp his basic existing website with a complex website built with a pretty tricky back-end coding. I could do the front end, but I had to hire a back-end dev to build the functionality. Bob had a major launch in a month's time, and it had to be ready. I usually ask for a 25% deposit up front, but Bob said no. He was stung by the last dev and wasn't going to lose any more money. Now, from the moment I met Bob, my gut was telling me that this was going to end badly. The problem was, I needed the money, and it was worth quite a lot of money for me and the dev. I skipped the deposit on the promise he paid in full before it went on his server. Bob agreed. For an entire month, we worked day and sometimes all night to get this done in his time frame. With a day to spare, we had it done, and I'd never been so proud of what we had achieved. I was honestly excited to show Bob. The next day, I sent a link to my test server, and he phoned me to discuss it. Bob said everything looked good, but he was worried his server's PHP version may be too old to run it. I assured him it would, but he said he was too scared it won't, and we would scrub our hands of it. We went backwards and forwards, but he was insistent the site had to be uploaded and tested on his server before he parts with a penny. I chatted to my dev. He didn't like it either, but agreed we would upload our work onto his server. Bob gave me the FTP details and server login, and I uploaded the site. I told him it was live, and then nothing. I sent several emails and then phone calls. The emails went unanswered, and the phone went to voicemail. Sensing a major problem, I rushed to my computer, fired up my FTP program to delete our work on his server, and access denied. He had locked us out, and the following day he went live with our work. For several days I tried phoning until one morning he answered the phone and said,
Listen, I'm not ever going to pay you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Then Bob hung up. Rage was a good word for my feelings. I was shaking while I still held the phone in my hand. For the next hour, my range of words was growing in complexity. As I sat there figuring out what to do next, it hit me. Revenge will be mine. I registered a new domain name, which was Bob's travel domain name, plus sucks at the end. If Bob's website was called bobstravel.com, I had purchased bobstravelsucks.com. I uploaded our work, basically an exact mirror of his live website, onto my new domain. I used my all-powerful mega PageRank domain to link to my new sucks domain. Within a month, my website jumped above his website in Google for every conceivable search phrase you would use for the packages he sold. No matter what you typed in, my site was the first result, and his was always below mine. During that month, I created a second website, which was Bob's full name with sucks at the end. On this second website, I posted what happened, screenshots of his emails, and warning everyone what a con man he is. Bob had a somewhat unusual first and last name. Again, within a month, my website was above his own personal website. I then forgot all about it. About 4 months later, I get a cease and desist email from a solicitor's firm. A quick Google showed the solicitor's firm was made up and didn't exist. I reply back with, I'm not ever going to take them down, and there is nothing you can do about it. Every now and then, I'd get emails from people he had conned by taking their money for a travel package, but never booking their package. I'd put those on both of my websites, making sure those juicy important keywords, his full name and company name, were spread across each negative review. A few more months pass, and I get an anonymous email linking to a new domain called My Name Sucks. I'm told to remove my 2 websites, and he will remove this new one. A quick search, and what do you know? It isn't even on Google. No one could find it. I reply back for a second time with his comment to me. As each month passes, I'm getting more and more people emailing me saying they've been ripped off. I keep adding them to my website. Turns out, the travel agency world is well regulated, and they started an investigation into Bob's company, using my website as their main tool. I get a call from Bob. Bob is not a happy Bob. In fact, Bob is more of a desperate Bob, Looking at this text now, I know you can almost hear the despair and resentment in Bob's voice. Bob pleads and literally begs me to pull the sites down. Not only is he being investigated by the Travel Agency Association, but he had some very important friends that didn't appreciate the bad press he was causing in their circles. He offers to pay me the money he owed me, nothing more, just what he owed. For the third time, and with a massive smile on my face, I say, listen, I'm not ever taking them down, and there is nothing you can do about it. Roll on a few months, and I discover his travel company has been removed from all travel associations. No matter what you typed into Google, my website outranked his, and all the bad reviews on my site were the first things his potential customers would see. I crippled his business so badly, it went bust. During the collapse, one of his ex-employees contacted me and told me how hard he had worked to get my websites off the first page. He had registered dozens and dozens of other domains in hopes that some would jump ahead. Little did he know, only the top dozen websites in the world could jump it. Apparently, his property was tied into loans on the failing business, and he lost his house too. It took me just about a year to turn his business from a cash cow to a dead cow. Motto of the story: if you ever think to mess with a dev, don't. Update: many of you are saying I should have taken the money and not pulled the sites down. At that point, it wasn't about the money. He thought he could simply buy his way out of it after pretending to be a solicitor and then trying the same thing on me. Him knowing I didn't care about the money anymore must have driven him crazy, because money was all he cared about. He then knew he could do nothing to stop his business going down, and all he could do was watch it fall apart around him. Has anyone ever tried to con you out of money? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
This story made me feel so good. I just love it when bad people are dealt the karma they deserve.
Entitled family doesn't want dogs at their picnic at the dog beach. In British Columbia, we're just getting through a heat wave with temperatures up to 40 degrees Celsius in Vancouver. Naturally, we all want to get out and cool off at the river or ocean. At my favorite creek spot for the dog, and one of the few off-leash areas where there's a nice wide and deep swimming spot, a family of 4, without a dog, came and set up a picnic and play area for their kids using most of the shaded space on this side of the creek. They have slightly distanced themselves from the main group of humans and dogs in the hot sun. Since I didn't feel like roasting on the sunny side, I tried to put myself over where I wasn't disturbing them and the dog wouldn't bother the picnic. After about 5 minutes of the dog fetching his ball and bringing it back to me, I can see them eyeing me up, and finally the dad approaches me. Entitled Dad:
Excuse me, but were you planning on being here a while? We came over here to get away from the dogs.
Me: oh yes, we come here most days to get away from the sun and cool off. We usually swim and throw the ball for half an hour. Entitled Dad:
Well, we were here first, and as I said, we were hoping to avoid being around dogs with our kids and food.
Me: well, I'm very sorry, but in case you weren't aware, this is the only off-leash swimming spot locally. And if you go 15 minutes down the river trail, there's actually a no-dogs beach with lots of shade. Entitled Dad repeats himself, slightly more aggressively. Me: sir, you and your family are taking up all of the shaded bank of the creek and have spread yourselves out in the middle of a dog park. I'm not sure what you'd like me to do, as I have every right to use this area as well. Entitled Dad:
And we have the right to not be bothered by you and your dog while we're trying to spend family time together. Maybe you should find another place to swim.
At this point, I'm hot. It's 35 degrees out, and this guy is acting like he owns the beach. I snap and tell him that I will be using this end of the beach, and if they aren't comfortable around dogs, they should move to the non-dog friendly beach down the trail. I turn and take a few steps away, and to make it clear the exchange is over, I call the dog to me. He's a good Labrador and very friendly, so he doesn't understand when he's not wanted. But the last part made me laugh. After being glared at for the better part of an hour while the dog swims and plays with the others and I read my book, I decide to move on and have to go by them to get to the trail. Throw one last ball in the creek, and after fetching it, the dog trots by them, pausing to shake all over their chairs and phones. Mom started spluttering, and I just look at her and tell her that there is a non-dog friendly beach just 15 minutes down the trail with a smile. I denied a cop the bathroom code at Subway. So, I was working at Subway a few years ago, and a man came in with his wife and 2 kids. I had all 4 sandwiches started when the man asked me for the code to the bathroom. The policy was you had to make a purchase to get the bathroom code. But by the way he was doing the potty dance, it was pretty apparent this guy needed to go. Obviously, either he or his wife will pay for the 4 sandwiches I've already started. The next day, my boss sits me down and lectures me about how the code is on the receipt for a reason. She watched the tape and saw me give the code to the man and tells me,
I don't care who it's for. Whether it's your friend, family, whatever, you name it. You do not give the code under any circumstances.
Later on that night, I was working by myself when some guy in a trench coat and greasy long hair comes in the side door and said,
Hey man, somebody got seriously messed up outside.
A long line of customers waited for me while I went around to check. It wasn't the best part of town, so you never knew with people. Anyways, as Trenchcoat Man stated, someone was seriously messed up outside. His face was all hurt and he was just a mess. I called 911 and went back to making sandwiches. Sometime later, a few cop cars pull up and an ambulance. They were doing their business outside, and then one of the officers comes in and asks for the bathroom code. Like 6 hours earlier, my boss told me to not give it under any circumstances without a purchase. I laughed a little and told him what I told all the other customers. I'm sorry, you have to make a purchase first. You can get a cookie, which is $0, and then it'll be on the receipt. He didn't realize the laugh was really at myself and how awkward of a situation he unknowingly put me in. Nor did I have a chance to explain it before the laugh and the rejection of the bathroom code caused the cop to become straight up furious. He gives me 3 warnings to give him the code. Each time I tell him I'm not going to just give it to him, and the customers are on my side, telling him I'm just doing my job. After his 3rd warning, he shook his head and muttered,
I can't believe you're interfering with an ongoing investigation.
And he uses the walkie on his shoulder to get some information. About 5 minutes later, one of the cops handed me a phone. I answered and my manager said,
Are you serious?
Long story short, the cop got the bathroom code and a free bag of chips. Man who doesn't understand refunds calls police on cashier, me, for theft. Hello all. This is my first post on this sub, but I do have a feeling I will be a regular poster now. A little background. I, 20, female, have been working at a local Chinese takeout for the past year. If we had a manager, I would be manager, but our chain of command is boss man, top cashier, cashiers, drivers, cooks. This means I'm regularly tasked with things a manager would handle, such as PIC training, supply orders such as utensils and sauces, and most notably, handling all refunds. On to the tale. Cast. We've got me, and we've got the man who doesn't understand refunds. It's a pretty slow evening on my 5 to 11:30 p.m. shift when man calls to place a delivery order. All is going well until I inform him our standard delivery time, 45 minutes to an hour. Well, he will not have this.
Cancel my order. Too long,
he says. Sure thing, says myself, being sure to remind him that since he had us charge him for his delivery ahead of time, it will be a couple of business days before it actually reflects on his account. This is where all heck breaks loose. Man does not simply demand his money, but screams through the phone that he will be down immediately and that we will be handing him money from the register. Man hangs up as I mentally prepare for his assumed arrival. Man arrives 15 to 30 minutes after our friendly chat and is still just as friendly. He again demands his money, so I attempt one last time to explain that his money is indeed on its way to his account, but to no avail. In earshot of all of our waiting customers, man dials 911 to report a theft at so-and-so Chinese takeout. Of course, the cops speed over. We sit very close to the local police station, and man gets to them first, so I let them chat. Cop then comes to me, explaining he knows the issue now and doesn't need further assistance. I see him go over to man once more, some words are exchanged, and out the door man goes. No register money in tow, thankfully. Not too dramatic of an ending, but the kicker? Cop comes back to me one last time to say, You wouldn't believe how many grown adults don't understand how refunds work. To you, Mr. Officer, I believe you. Man has yet to be seen/heard from again, and this was approximately 6 months ago. Victory. Am I the jerk for not letting my best friend have her wedding on my property after being uninvited? One of my, 29 male, best friends, Carla, 31 female, is getting married soon. It's only meant to be a small backyard type of wedding, but they've been planning it for a few months now, and originally it was supposed to be on my property. They wanted it because it's private, has lots of open space for the reception, a nice view, and the house could be used for them to get ready and stuff. Of course, I said yes. She and her fiance, Rick, were very happy. Thing is, Carla and I do have a history. We went out on and off in college, but decided to stay friends. Then I met my wife. We got married. Carla met Rick, and now here we are. Now, my wife knows I went out with Carla back in college, and she didn't care. Carla still went to our wedding and everything. I never knew if Rick was told or not. It's not my relationship, therefore not my business to say anything, so I never did. Rick found out recently, and not in the best way. Not sure how, but from what I heard from friends is that one mutual friend told him, no idea why, that we used to date. Not only that, but apparently Carla said a couple of years ago she was still in love with me when she was already dating Rick. Don't have actual confirmation if that's exactly what he was told. All Carla's told me is that Rick was told about our past and he's angry at her for never saying anything. It became quite a drama and we didn't hear back from her for over a month until now. She told me they're going to couples counseling and that the wedding is still on, but Rick requested that I not attend. It sucks, but I totally get why he wouldn't be comfortable. Then I asked the obvious question, where are they going to hold the wedding then? To my surprise, she said they still want it at our place. Rick said so, and in my mind, I'm going, he doesn't want the guy who dated his fiancée years ago at the wedding, but still wants the wedding at his house? My wife and I are expected to just not be at our home that weekend, and I told Carla no. They're going to have to find someplace else since we're not going to simply leave our home to them for the weekend. Not only for safety reasons, but it just doesn't make sense. Rick doesn't want me around because he's not comfortable, but is comfortable enough to have their wedding at my house? They really want their wedding here though, and because of that, I've been bugged by not only her, but also Rick and some friends who think I'm being a petty jerk for not letting them have the wedding here anymore. Honestly, don't think that I am. It just doesn't make sense at all to have to leave our own place for a wedding we're no longer welcome to, and leaving our home totally vulnerable. Still, being accused of sabotaging their wedding, and Rick believes it's the least I can do after everything. Am I the jerk? Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you still let them have the wedding at your house, even though you couldn't be there, or not? Please let us know.
I would, but I'd charge them an arm and a leg for it.
Karen's stepdaughter demands I pay her credit card debt. I have been remarried to my amazing new wife for about 6 years now. She has moved in with me along with her now 23-year-old daughter. After my most recent divorce, I have saved money aside so that I can put my son through college. He has just turned 18 now. My stepdaughter, unfortunately, has had difficulties managing her money responsibly. She has gone on shopping sprees during lockdown using the CARE Act stimulus checks from the government to buy herself Louis Vuitton bags and red-bottom heels. We understand that she has put herself in a difficult position. That's why we are considering bailing her out just once to help her. My wife says that we should use the money from my son's college fund to bail her out. I refuse to because I've saved that money specifically for my son. My wife is upset as she thinks that we should operate as a team and treat each kid as if they were our own. Am I the jerk in this situation? Edit. Thank you for all of the responses. I didn't realize this post was going to blow up. I have decided I will not be providing my stepdaughter any funds out of my son's college tuition. My wife and I have scheduled counseling to discuss further steps. Rest assured, my stepdaughter will have to learn to cover this herself. Will not be responsible and will not punish my son because of poor spending on her side. Again, thank you for all of the replies. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you use your son's college funds to bail your stepdaughter out of her credit card debt or not? Please let us know.
That's your divorce lawyer's what I'd do.
I can't open the safe, but I can eat your dinner. I used to work as a shift manager for a pizza franchise across a handful of locations. I closed most nights at one location or another, which usually meant I was alone inside the store after dinner anytime the drivers were delivering. This meant answering the phone, working the register, and making all of the pizzas while we were still open. One day, I got robbed, and the owners changed the policies on how much cash could be in the register and how frequent drops into the safe had to happen. I did not have the ability to open the safe, only deposit into them using a special one-way door. One night, we had several cash orders with large bills that left my register a little lean, which was a rare occurrence. No problem, the dinner rush is over, and statistically, I should be totally fine. In walks customer for a pickup. He wants to pay for an $11 order in cash with a $100 bill. Normally, this would be fine, but I had just been wiped out of my 20s and had all of maybe $50 between the 1s, 5s, and 10s. The 50s and the 100s got directly dropped into the safe under the new policy. Me: I'm sorry, I don't have enough change for a $100 bill right now. Do you have anything smaller or a card? He had a $20 bill in his wallet that I caught a glimpse of when he opened it. Customer:
What do you mean?
Me: I had a lot of cash orders for dinner and the registers basically got wiped clean. Customer in a condescending tone:
Okay, so get more change from like the safe or something. I'm sure you can figure this out.
Me: I don't have access to the safe or a means to get change right now. I'm sorry about that. Customer:
I don't see how you're making this my problem. Send someone to the bank or an ATM.
Me: I'm really sorry. It's just me and the bank's closed, but there's an ATM across the street in the convenience store if you want to use it. Customer:
I said you should go to an ATM. This is ridiculous.
Me: I apologize for the inconvenience. I can't leave the store and corporate does not issue bank cards to in-store employees. However, some good news is that I think you might have overlooked a $20 bill in your wallet. For some reason, this set him off. Customer:
Why are you looking in my wallet?
He launched off into this speech about minding my own business and $100 bills being legal tender and must be accepted. I had placed another order in the oven before walking to the register, and at this point, those other pizzas were exiting the oven conveyor and are at risk of falling. This also means that we've been talking for about 7 minutes by this point. Me: I want to reiterate that I am by no means refusing to accept, just implying you would be significantly shortchanged if I tried to do so. Your $11 order would end up being a $50 order. Customer:
I think you're full of crap, and you can get what you need to out of your safe. You just get your kicks by getting to assert your power because you can't do better than minimum wage. If you can't break this bill, then just cancel my order.
Me: Listen, I've tried to be polite. You're not really working with me here, and I need to box other orders now. I can't open the safe. I said the same thing to the last person who asked. He had a weapon pointed at me, and he was even less friendly than you. If you would like to cancel the order, then I can do that. While I can't open the safe, I can most certainly eat your dinner. He found the $20 bill. Speaking of pizza, what's the best place you've ever had pizza from? Please let us know.
Chuck E. Cheese pizza was always the best. I still dream of it to this day.
Reject my idea, then praise the dumb idea from the boss's daughter? So, back when I was a university student, I got hired for a summer vacation position at a dog training school to design and maintain their website. It was kind of one of those scammy sorts of certifications that would never land anyone a job anywhere. But it was a thing, and the school was actually fairly popular. Now, this was back in the day before MySpace, where Geocities websites were our own little touch on the internet. If you are young enough to never have had the pleasure of visiting a Geocities site, here are a few of the common themes. Like the Dawson's Creek theme? Not for long, because your inner ear canal is going to be eviscerated on half the ones you visit with "So open up your morning light" being shouted at you. All the fonts, all of them, from Comic Sans to Times New Roman, you're going to see them all. Wait, all those fonts are visually appealing. Better make a giant slurry of colors in the background to balance it out. And let's top all of that off with some low-res, low-FPS GIFs. Utter perfection. Anyway, I was an actually competent web designer, and it was clear that their official website was made by a not-so-competent web designer. It was basically a Geocities site, hosted off Geocities, which somehow made it worse. That's kind of why they hired me. A lot of their graduating customers in the final survey called the homepage a total mess. The daughter of the owner of the company had designed it, and she was not happy that people disapproved of her work. You see, I was the poor person in the position of cleaning up her crap, and I really did make a valiant effort to be civil about my job, essentially boiling down to undoing her job. You have to understand here that at the end of the Geocities era, people were beginning to realize that visitors to our websites didn't want to have seizures upon opening them, and the web in itself was gradually moving towards simplicity. Drop-down menus were all the buzz, especially because high-speed cable was not yet popularized, but nobody wanted to load an abomination that reminded them of that god-awful teeny drama with kids who had thesauruses in their back pockets. The owner's sweet baby girl had also apparently caught wind of what they were paying me, which she thought was far too inflated. Their course salespeople were making half the hourly that I was making, so why did they need me when they had her? The jerk drove a brand new Volkswagen New Beetle, so obviously she wasn't hurting for money, but I digress. During our first meeting, she asked me about my plans for the website. I went over how the current website's bones were good, which they most assuredly were not, but it could use a more modern touch. I proposed simplifying it, with drop-down menus and so on. During this meeting, the owner's daughter gradually transferred her smug smiles into a sneer, and later on into a full-out scowl. Eventually, she interrupted me, saying that I wasn't there to redesign the site, the purpose for which I was explicitly hired, but to do the tech stuff with her doing the design stuff. In general, people agreed with her. Maybe art director was hidden somewhere in her BS consultant title, but whatever. I realized then that my tenure there wasn't going to last long. To milk out every penny from my paycheck, I suggested that she handle the design side and I build the site. Without exaggeration, everything she suggested was bordering on malicious stupidity. I did it all anyway. Barking sounds on clicking links? You got it. Wait, you want me to put how many success story pictures on one page? Well, you're the designer. Yes, I'm fairly sure that DISIPLINE is the correct spelling after all. No, I'm sure people's 56K internet connections will handle this just fine. A month and a half later, our abomination was complete. She was strangely satisfied, and to this day, I wonder if the entire thing was a ploy to get back at Daddy for something. You could legitimately build a better site in the Geocities web wizard tool. If the job mattered at all to me, I probably would have thrown up in disgust. When it was unveiled, everyone in the company unanimously hated it, and all I could say was that I was just the tech guy. I was soon thereafter let go for unrelated reasons, and a month later when I visited their site, I noticed they had gone back to the old one. Out of curiosity, all these years later, I just looked up the school, and apparently they still do exist. My act of malicious compliance obviously didn't do any long-lasting damage on them, as their new website is about what you would expect from one in 2021. But goodness gracious, I am still proud of myself. Did you ever have a Geocities page? Or how about a MySpace? Please let us know.
Oh, come on, Mr. Reddit. You know how young your listeners are. Half of them have probably never even heard of MySpace.
Am I the jerk for asking the couple viewing my house why they wasted our time? My husband, 33, and I, 30 female, are selling our house that we purchased 8 years ago. We currently have it listed for $35K more than what we purchased it for due to all of the renovations and upgrades we put into it. Everything on the inside is brand new and was done in the last year and a half, with special order carpet, furnace, hot water tank, and kitchen backsplash going in just 2 months ago. The only thing we didn't add to the home was a garage, detached, as we chose to have a large backyard instead. Although the electrical work is in place, as well as the permits should whoever purchase it decide to build one. We do have 2 parking stalls behind our house though on our property, not street parking. Our realtor messaged us with a viewing request at 5:30 to 6, which we agreed to, so we packed our kids up as well as our dog and we left. We got back home at 6:30, only to find them still on our house. I apologized and instantly went back outside while my husband took the kids to the park. Now we are working with a realtor and not selling independently as we don't want to deal with the people viewing our homes personally. While I was outside waiting for them to finish up, this woman and her husband came out to ask me questions, like what the cost for a garage would be. I told them an approximate price, and she starts laughing, asking me how we could list our house so high when they would still have to pay $20K or more for a garage. I told her we made the decision to put that kind of money to upgrade the interior of our house, as a garage was never a need for us. She then got annoyed and began saying she wouldn't pay more than $320,000 for our house, which was less than what we purchased it for. I told her I would never agree to that this conversation was over, and that if she had any more questions, then her realtor could reach out to mine. She began arguing with me again, so I snapped and asked why she was wasting everyone's time, as our listing clearly stated that there was no garage, but that I would gladly put one in, but would be bumping up my listing by another $30,000. She freaked out and said it would put our place out of her price range, so I told her not to bother looking at places priced above her means and to get off my property. She left crying because of how rude I was to her, and her husband called me a jerk. My husband thinks I could have ended the conversation more eloquently, but I feel she crossed a line by questioning me in the first place. Am I the jerk? Edit. Just want to clear up a couple of things. 1. No, my realtor was not on site, as it's not common practice where I live to have the seller's realtor there unless they are the ones personally doing the showings. An interested buyer's realtor reaches out to him to request a showing, which is arranged upon our approval, and he then provides them with the code to the lockbox on our front door. 2. Their realtor was there initially, as I saw him when I had come home. I then left to our back alley with my dog while my husband took the kids across the street to the park. I'm assuming they had left all together, and when their realtor drove off, they came around to the back to start questioning me. 3. For those of you asking why I came home when I should have looked for their cars in my driveway, I have no driveway. It's all street parking, and the cars in front of my house belong to my neighbors. We came back 30 minutes after the viewing was supposed to end, and my realtor had received no notification that they were there past the appointed time. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the buyers? Please let us know.
Beggars can't be choosers. Nothing's worse than wasting someone's time and then being rude to them about it.
No, you don't know who you're talking to.
Entitled guest tries to get me fired.
My husband was the GM of a home-style resort in Vegas, rooms with living rooms and full kitchens. As such, he frequently had people who would have extended stays, a week or more. It was not your typical extended stay hotel, it was very upscale. At one point, his night auditor had a minor health scare, and my husband asked me if I didn't mind filling in 2 nights a week to give the auditor some time to take care of himself. Well, his minor health scare turned into a major health scare, and I ended up working 7 nights a week for nearly 3 months while he recovered. That was a nightmare in itself, but I adored Walt, the auditor, and by me filling in, it ensured he would have a job to come back to. We had one guest who had booked for 5 nights, and then extended an additional 2 more nights. She came to check out early morning when I was still the only one at the desk. She was irate about the amount she was being charged for her room. She kept insisting that she was given a special rate, and her special rate is all that she should be charged. I don't remember the actual total, but to keep it simple, it was something like this. She was paying $500 for a 5-night stay. She extended her 2 extra nights, and instead of charging her rack rate, we extended her at the lower rate. Her 7-night stay meant she owed $700. She was adamant that her special rate was $500, and that was all she should pay no matter how many nights she actually stayed. She simply could not grasp the math that if you stay extra nights, you do in fact owe for those nights. I was trying to explain it to her as best I could, despite my internal monologue of, "This Karen is not very smart," when she sticks her finger in my face and tells me,
"You don't understand. I know your general manager, and I'm going to tell him how you are treating me and trying to scam me of my money. I'm going to have your job for this. You don't know who you're talking to."
I smiled as sweetly as I could at her and told her, "Well, ma'am, when I go home and crawl into bed next to him, I will be sure to relay that message to him. Have a fantastic day." Edit. Insane lady sputtered and left without signaling the credit card receipt. When I told my husband, he laughed and knew exactly who the woman was. She was a dancer from someplace in the Midwest who would come out and dance for a week or two, make bank because Vegas, duh, then go back home for a while. Apparently, she had been harassing the day staff all week long with stupid requests. This has gone down in our family history as the stupid dancer story. Rental car company tried to rip me off. I rented a car for 5 weeks while my car was being repaired from a car accident. The rental company had a couple of great policies: no cleaning fee, no matter how gross the car was, and unlimited miles. Ideal for me. I live in the country and going anywhere is a drive. When my car was finally scheduled to be finished, a Monday evening, I called the rental car company on Sunday, asked about return details. They said return time would be 5:30 p.m. Monday, but I could just leave it at the shop and leave the keys in the shop's drop box. I said sure. The next night I went, got my car, left keys in the box, got in my car and check engine light is on. Ugh. Staff says come back tomorrow and we will fix it. I go home thinking that I will be sitting at the shop all Tuesday because no other ride. Tuesday morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. to the rental car company very angry and saying that they can't get into the drop box and shop doesn't open until 9. I tell them I did just what they said to do. They told me they would be charging me an extra day. At that, I'm furious. I leave my house later and arrive at the shop at 8:50. Rental car guys aren't there. I sit around and shop opens. I grab the rental keys and give them my car. Right on time, rental car guys appear. They demand the keys, and I ask if I'm still getting charged for an extra day. One guy is inspecting the car while the other tells me, yes, I'm getting charged an extra day. Guy inspecting it comes over and says the car looks good. It should be ready to rent out immediately. I had cleaned it the day before because I didn't want to be a jerk. Well, I refused to give him the keys. Since I'm getting charged an extra day, that means it's my car until 5:30 today, right? At that, he gets nervous. Says they need the car back. I will give you the keys now if you don't charge me an extra day. But if I'm being charged an extra day, I'm using it. He refuses to bend, so I leave. At this point, I'm petty and angry, so I go straight home. I own a farm and it's been raining like mad lately. I get to work. By the time 10 a.m. rolls around, the car is covered in mud. Like, this black car looks painted brown. I didn't trash the inside because I'm not that petty. I hop in the car and drive to the rental place. I'm pretty covered in mud at this point. I had put trash bags on the front seat to limit it. I walk into the rental car place looking like I fell into a mud pit. The guy who refused to cancel the charge looks horrified. I tell them, this car is great for mudding. I'm gonna go mudding for the rest of the day, just swinging by to ask where to put the keys at 5:30. I'm all smiles and dripping sweetness. I watch the life leave him. His shoulders slump, and he says if I return the car now, they will cancel the charge because they need to rent out the car. I give him the keys and take an Uber to the shop where my car is ready. No cleaning fee and no extra day charge. Have you ever had a bad experience with a car rental company? If so, what happened? Please let us know.
Dollar Car Rental ripped us off for over $700 in additional fees. They refused to refund any of it, and their customer service is complete trash. I wouldn't recommend Dollar Car Rental to my worst enemies. Warn everyone you know.
For the 1000th time, I don't work at Wally World. Hi everyone. This happened earlier this week, and I still can't believe it happened. So, I'm 25, female, and a preschool teacher. The director of my center recently gave all the teachers and aides blue t-shirts with the center's name and logo on the front and told us from now on, every Wednesday, we were to wear these shirts. This happened on one of these Wednesdays. It was June 30th, 2021, and I had just gotten off of work. I decided to walk to my local Wally World, about a 45-minute walk in the opposite direction of my home, and pick up some supplies I knew I would need for my 4th of July camping trip. I've gone on this camping trip every single 4th of July weekend since I was born. I'm not kidding, my parents have pictures. And since we moved back in February, some of our camping supplies were missing, so I knew exactly what I needed to get. Here is where I should point out the shade of blue on my work shirt is the exact same shade of blue that Wally World has their employees wear. I didn't have that bright yellow vest some of them will have, but I did have on that blue shirt. Anyway, I made it to Wally World and headed to the outdoor sports section, cart in hand. I loaded my cart with a small tent for my son, a large instant canopy, a cooler, and some other small supplies such as a first aid kit, bug spray, etc. As I was loading my cart, I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I didn't look, but instantly moved my cart thinking, oh no, I must be in someone's way. Oh, how wrong I was. I heard the throat clearing again, and this is when I looked up. Right before me stood the wannabe country girl version of a Karen, head to toe in pink camo, real tree hat upon her bleached blonde hair, the gaudette pair of sunglasses I'd ever seen. You get the drift. She looked like a Barbie decided to go hunting for a day with zero hunting experience. Me. What do you need? Karen.
Excuse me? Is that how you greet customers here, young lady?
Me. I'm sorry?
Yeah, you should be. You're not standing at the register like you should be. Instead, you're walking around the aisles like you're on a leisurely stroll.
Me. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just doing some shopping.
Well, you can wait until after your shift is over. Now get over to the locked case. I need one of these items for my baby.
Me. Listen, lady. Lady is most certainly not the word I used, but I don't think I can actually say what I called her here. I don't know who the heck you think you are, but you need to back off.
How dare you? You need to treat customers with some more respect, especially your elders. Why are teenagers so disrespectful?
Me. Lady, 1, I'm 25. 2, respect is earned. You'll get it when you give it. 3, do you see Wally World on my shirt? No. Then get out of here, now. I don't work here. Normally, I'm not confrontational, But after dealing with tiny hurricanes of snot all day, my whole body hurt and I was ready to check out and call for my cab. Karen had the look on her face as if she had seen something terrifying and walked away. When she sped away, I called to her.
I hope you don't breed. We don't need any more Karens in the world.
Yes, I crossed the line a bit with that last remark, but boy, did it feel good to say it. Am I the jerk for not answering the door after asking a friend to not pop by? I have a neighbor who I befriended. I used to walk her dog for her on occasion, and we would regularly go on walks together. This woman has an abrasive personality and few friends. Her daughter hasn't spoken to her in 10 years. Underneath that, I really liked her. She has good qualities. After a year of friendship, things changed. In the space of 6 weeks, I found out that my husband has a serious illness, and my friend found out that her landlord is selling her place and she also lost her job. Unfortunately, it was her 5th job since lockdown began. During our walks, we had talked about jobs and strategies. When my husband got sick, it was a major change for me. He's been hospitalized twice, has nurses that come and help us, and caring for him takes a good deal of my time. I work for myself, so I've been able to manage. However, I've had less time for friends and leisure. This is where things get sticky. I ran into her a few days after my husband's first hospitalization, and she complained that she came by several times and I didn't answer the door, but she heard my dog bark. I reminded her that just because my dog is home doesn't mean I am, and I asked her to text me before she comes over. She has texted me before to ask if I wanted to walk. I didn't think this was a problem. She also doesn't knock loudly, and sometimes when I'm in the back of my house, I only hear the dog bark, which he does when people walk by or someone leaves packages or groceries. But then I did something bad. I actually did ignore her. I saw her again and asked her to text me if she wanted to visit or walk. She would come by unannounced and stay for an hour, and I no longer have time for that. Getting rid of her is very difficult. I'd practically have to push her out the door or she'd keep talking right over me. One night I was making dinner. I'm sure she looked into my window and saw me. Oops, but my hands were covered in food, and I was annoyed that she didn't text me first so I could say, "Give me a few minutes." So I didn't answer the door when she knocked. Then my husband was hospitalized again, and she texted me asking if I could walk her neighbor's dog, a woman I don't know. I apologized and replied that my husband is in the hospital and asked her not to give the neighbors my phone number because I wouldn't be able to help. She sent a polite reply, and that was our last communication. A day later, I get a text from a number I don't recognize. It's my friend's neighbor asking if I could watch her dog for a week. I explained the situation, and she was very nice. Last weekend, I was taking my dog out for a quick walk, and I saw a U-Haul. It was my friend moving. She came out and pretended not to see me. Yes, I ignored her knocking. But am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friend? Please let us know.
Hey, at least she's moving and now you don't have to deal with her anymore.
Well, guys, it happened. This just happened 30 minutes ago. I had to call the police on a customer. She ordered something that I said came with guacamole. She then told me, once I gave her the food, that she doesn't like guacamole, and so I took it back to the cook to fix it. As simple as removing the salad and remaking it without guac. She then told me we gave her less meat when I brought back this same plate, sans guac. She then says that she either wanted a completely new plate with more steak or her money back, and at this point she's being really rude. So I decide to just nip this in the bud and take the food and give her a refund, because at this point there's a line. She refuses the refund. I tell her then she needs to leave. She now wants to talk to the cook because of course he must be in charge, not me, the manager. I tell her that's not going to happen. He doesn't speak English and this woman does. She goes around to the back door trying to talk to him and he's just looking at her like, what is this crazy lady saying? Anyways, and so I call the police because at this point she won't leave. The cook shuts and locks the door at my request and the lady starts banging on the windows, saying she wants that refund now, but she's getting aggressive and I'm not opening the window for that crap, while I'm talking to the dispatcher who says the officer is a couple of minutes out. She's slamming on the window. I'm talking to the dispatcher on my phone. My boss is on the cook's phone telling him what's happening, and the police arrive. He talks with the woman first, and I'm fine with that. I have a bad response to conflict because of my past, and there's no way in heck I'm getting in that, let alone stepping foot outside of the safety of the kitchen. Officer then talks to me. He has a tired smile on his face as he asks me how I am, and I say I'll be better once she leaves. He laughs and asks me what I want to do. He has her trespassed rather fast, and she doesn't look happy on her way out. All this in front of her 2 kids. I probably shouldn't have, but I was feeling a little braver with the officer here, so I waved at her as she left. Anyways, that's my Karen encounter today. Not allowed in the bakery I work in. I'm 18 and have worked in my hometown bakery/shop since I was 16. It's a cute little town where everyone practically knows everyone, and there are mostly sweet old men and ladies walking their dogs or kids running around to collect stickers from the local library. I've lived here my whole life, and though I'm looking at moving for university this year, it's still a wholesome little town. Anyway, this takes place during the lockdown, but shortly after the first initial lockdown in England. We are considered an essential business because we sell milk and bread, as well as flour at the time. We have to wear masks at our jobs and advise other customers to wear masks too, though we're not supposed to tell them specifically to wear one. I still wasn't back at college for the time, so was asked to help out a few hours here and there with my boss and coworker because one employee was still furloughed for the time being. I had to say yes and got a little extra money under my belt. However, because of our low stock at the big bakery, which supplied all of our food to cook and bread to sell, we didn't get a lot of sandwich fillings and often had to go to the local shop right next door in order to pick up extra butter, lettuce, etc. This one fateful day, we had run out of butter as we recently started remaking bacon baps in the morning and the builders were coming in herds. So my boss asked me to take a few pounds out of the till, go get some butter, then get the receipt, yada yada. I was used to doing this and didn't complain. I took my work apron off and threw my jacket on because man, it was freezing. Got the butter, moving on. As I go to walk back into the bakery, this woman sticks out her foot by the door and stops me. I'm silently praying it's not a Karen, and luckily it isn't, but she's not far off. Lady.
Ahem.
Me. Yes? Lady.
It's 2 customers at a time, and I was here first.
For work, we have to wear black trousers and a black button-up. Because we're on our feet all day, all of us wear leggings and trainers. Paired with my hoodie, I did not look like I worked there, so I understood the confusion. Me. I know it's 2 people at a time. I'm just trying to...
I was here first.
I try going around her again, and she moves closer to the door. I have really bad anxiety, and lockdown has made me really paranoid about people being near me I don't know. So to keep myself from panicking, and to keep her unmasked self away from me, I stepped back. My boss hadn't noticed us, as she didn't know I was back from the shops, and was busy serving this mom and her screaming kid, as well as a builder. I gave up by this point. As the second person left, I quickly darted in and sorted my apron out again, just in time to see the lady walk in, ready to throw hands. My boss had gone to doing paperwork as there were only us 2, and there was a lot to do. I smirked under my mask. Me, rather sweetly. Hello, how can I help you today? The lady stands there for a moment, almost dumbfounded. And you guessed it, she wasn't wearing a mask. I knew she was about to throw a tantrum, so I made things even better. Me. Boss, did you want me to deliver customers bread on the way home from work? My boss responds with a hearty, yes please, and I turn back to finish serving the lady, who leaves without so much as a word. Despite 9 out of 10 of our customers being jerks, that was a good day to work in retail. I told my boss this story, and we had a small laugh. She did wonder why I was standing outside with some butter. Entitled mom tries to make my sister-in-law's life miserable in order to get a house. So, this story requires some background to be understood, so please bear with me. Recently, my mother-in-law passed. My wife's sister, Lucy, 40, female, has a mental handicap where she has the mentality and maturity of about a 9-year-old. She has lived with her mother her entire life and was, understandably, devastated by the loss. Because of her handicap, Lucy receives a Social Security disability check every month from the government in the amount of about $800. She and my mother-in-law had been renting an apartment using both of their incomes. However, with the loss of my mother-in-law's income, Lucy could no longer afford the apartment on her own. My mother-in-law and Lucy have a small dog, a Chihuahua, Maria, that they have had since it was born. Maria is now 12 years old. Lucy loves this little dog, and it's really the only thing she has left of her mother. My mother-in-law had taken care of Lucy for her whole life, to the point that Lucy never had to cook, clean, go grocery shopping, pay bills, make a budget, or do anything for herself. My mother-in-law's passing was not a surprise. She had been sick for a while. Therefore, for the past year or so, Lucy has been receiving services from a state-sponsored program, GP, to help her learn life skills such as cooking and cleaning. This program also offers housing assistance, but it was not needed before this time. How the housing assistant works is that the GP buys or rents housing and then places clients in the house, charging the client significantly reduced rent, with the state welfare program making up the difference. After my mother-in-law's passing, my wife became Lucy's power of attorney, allowing her to make financial and medical decisions for Lucy. My wife was able to get Lucy set up in GP housing at a cost to Lucy of $500 per month. This included all utilities, leaving Lucy $300 per month for internet, food, and anything else she's needed. It's not ideal, but it's doable. However, she would be unable to keep the dog. The reason for this is entitled Mom, who we will call Karen, because of course. Also living in the same GP housing as Lucy is Dottie, 20s female. Dottie is also handicapped. She's nonverbal and walks with a walker. However, she seems very sweet. Unlike her mother, Karen, Dottie requires 24/7 support from caregivers. Lucy also has caregivers coming weekdays during the day to help her. Maria ended up staying with one of her caregivers, Sophie, until a situation could be arranged where she and Lucy could live together. Okay, enough background. Let's get to the entitlement. When my wife met with the GP representative and Karen to discuss Lucy moving into the house, Karen told everyone that dogs were not allowed because the landlord forbade it. The landlord she was referring to was not the GP, but the owner of the house that the GP was renting from. My wife asked if she could discuss this with the landlord directly, and Karen said,
No, I'm representing the landlord, so you just have to trust me.
It gets worse. Even though Lucy is technically renting from the GP, Karen insisted that my wife sign a sublease stating that we were renting from Karen. The representative from GP said to go ahead and sign it and that it would be fine. My guess is that, since Karen is paying the GP, the document would be unenforceable and that the GP rep just didn't want to deal with fighting Karen. So my wife signed it. Karen also wanted Lucy to pay the $500 monthly to her and that she would give it to GP. My wife stood her ground on that one. There was no way that we were trusting this person with Lucy's money. After much arguing, Karen finally agreed to let us pay the rent directly to the GP. Then the discussion went back to the dog. My wife asked if there was any way that Maria could live with Lucy. Karen said,
Of course not. My husband is allergic to dogs.
My wife said, So that means if your husband comes to see Dottie, he'd have a problem, right? Karen replied,
No, my husband never comes to the house, but I do all the time, and I can't be bringing dog dander home.
Later, when my wife and I were at the house to sign the sublease, Karen mentioned that she had to leave to pick up her other daughter's dog. What? Karen also tried to get security cameras installed in the house. They would cover the living room, the kitchen, and the dining room, basically all of the common areas. Because Dottie was nonverbal and couldn't tell Karen what was happening with her, she wanted to be able to observe what was going on in the house at any time. Nobody was okay with this. Not Lucy, not my wife, not the caregivers, and not the GP representative. Some of Dottie's caregivers told us that Karen had asked for this on multiple occasions. She didn't like being told no. So Lucy moved in without the dog. Sophie would drive her over to her house nearly every day to spend time with Maria. Every time Karen came to the house when Lucy was there, she told Lucy that she should just forget about the dog because she's never going to have Maria with her again. Everything having to do with Karen was starting to look a little fishy. Using public records search, I was able to determine that the owner of the house was an 80-year-old woman who inherited the house from her parents when they passed. Using this same search, I was able to learn that Karen owned 3 different properties that she rented out. I kinda got the impression that Karen was trying to somehow get the house from the owner, but we never figured out what that dynamic was all about. After living there 3 months, my wife received a letter from the owner of the house. It was an eviction notice. Apparently, the owner had decided to sell the house and Lucy had 30 days to move out. The letter also stated that Karen has decided not to renew the lease. My wife called Karen and, as it turns out, Karen got a similar letter from the owner stating Lucy had decided not to renew the lease. I could not help but laugh. It seemed that whatever Karen was trying to pull on the owner got the last laugh. A few weeks later, Lucy moved into another GP house. This one is more expensive, $600 per month, but it includes internet, which Lucy no longer has to pay for, so it's pretty much a wash. Also, another resident in the house has a dog. So after making sure that Maria and the other dog got along, Lucy has her dog back. Speaking of dogs, do you have a dog? And if so, what's their name? Please let us know.
I want to get a pug soon and name him Sparky.
The time my sister's boyfriend's mother got me kicked out at Christmas. For Christmas, every year, our extended family tradition is that each small family group does presents, stockings, and breakfast with the kids at home. Then we head to the grandparents' house for the turkey dinner. Then in the evening, all of those people head to my aunt's house for the big party, which all the cousins, plus her partner's side of the family. There are hundreds of us. Think of a swarm of locusts. One year, my mother called about a week beforehand to let me know of a change in plans. Instead of heading to my parents' house, we were going to go to Dark Helmet's before the big do. I was not in favor of this arrangement and bowed out gracefully. In the next few days, I underwent one of the biggest psychological attacks ever launched. I was ruining Christmas. It wasn't fair to make them choose between me and Dark Helmet. I was destroying my kids' relationships with family. It was such a small thing. If I didn't do it, I'd be responsible for every bit of evil that exists, blah blah blah. It was relentless, and I buckled on the 23rd when they got to my kids, who told me that they really wanted to go. They were relieved and started telling me all about their plans, none of which I cared about. But the highlight was going to be her normally shy husband's performance of his favorite song. Once he'd had a few drinks in him, you see, I'd be in for a real treat. The day of, we headed to their place. She was on her best behavior. She only had a problem with the way I cooked the ham I brought, how I'd worn my naturally curly hair, curly, with how much my outfits always consist of dark colors, with how I was wearing a sweater that showed too much, with how I was wearing heels even though I'm already so much taller than her, with how much more vain I am than she is, and a few more that I've forgotten. Before the food was an hour away from being ready, Dark Helmet's husband had consumed enough alcohol that he felt ready for the night's entertainment highlight. We all gathered around in the living room and he opened his mouth and completely botched the words. He even got the title wrong, and it was the most repeated word in the entire song. Think someone singing macaroni instead of macarena. I politely clapped with the rest of them and headed outside for some fresh air, hoping to avoid being asked for a critique. Dark Helmet cornered me just inside the door when I headed back inside.
So, what did you think of Jeffrey's performance?
Not his real name. It was nice. I'm not familiar with that version, but he did a surprisingly good job. That's where I went wrong.
What do you mean? That's the only version of the song.
Well, the version I heard was actual name of the song. She laughed at me and then went to make fun of me for it with everyone else in the house. How silly I was, trying to correct her husband on a song he's been singing for decades. Hilarious. They got such a kick out of proving me wrong. She kept harping on it, so when I finally got frustrated enough to throw caution to the wind, I offered to bring it up on my phone. Guys, she forbade me to use my phone to do a search and bring up the video. Forbade me. I, of course, did it anyways, and she then tried to grab the phone out of my hand. We had a legit tussle in the hallway, and she started yelling. Everyone came running to see what I had done to set her off, because that was the only reasonable conclusion. I told her that it was time for me to go, and I just wanted to be left alone to gather my things together and to get my kids ready to go home. This was unacceptable, and I found myself surrounded by a coven of shrieking harpies, all intent on having their say. Her husband wanted an apology. My sister wanted me to just do it to keep the peace. My parents were off on a "look what she's done now" tangent. Brother-in-law wanted me to show respect to his mother, and his inebriated brother just saw people in a confrontation and decided to just throw out random loud words in the same direction everyone else was facing. I managed to get all of my stuff together and got my kids ready to go. That's when Dark Helmet decided to ban me from the super party later that night. I figured it would be best to skip it anyway, no big loss. But then crap went sideways when she decided that she'd allow me to leave, but my kids had to stay. They were not going to let me ruin Christmas for my precious babies. They straight up backed me up through the door, then shut and locked it. I stayed outside on the lawn in 3 feet of snow and negative 30-degree weather for about 15 minutes, weighing the pros and cons of calling the cops / trying to stop myself from going nuclear. Luckily, a patrol car passed by, so I flagged them down. They went to the door with me so I could collect the kids and head home. No charges necessary. Luckily, I had picked up the fixings for dinner already, so we still managed to have a decent Christmas when we got home, all things considered. Oh, and I got to hear my daughters say, "Mommy, I think Dark Helmet is batfit insane." Am I the jerk for not giving it my all at work? Some background info. I've been working at a small retail business for about 3 years. Owner is great. I hear from her often, pays me well, and is just generally really good to me. We have 2 locations about 4 hours apart. I was the manager at location A, but decided to switch universities and move, which just so happened to be where location B was, so my boss transferred me there. I was manager at location A, and I absolutely loved my job. Me and my employees were all friends outside of work. The owner was very happy with how I did my job, and I was always excited to come into work. When I transferred to location B, the owner let me keep my pay, but I was going to just be a regular employee, which I was fine with. However, I quickly realized that location B was very different from location A. The girls there were nice at first, and for the most part are still amicable towards me. However, over time, it became obvious that they don't like me. Everyone there is friends outside of work, and I've just been a little ostracized. I don't mind much though, because they have very different interests and personalities than me. Sometimes they just make me feel a little unwelcomed. My big issue, however, is my new manager. She is a lot older than everyone else. The average age of people in the company, including the owner, is about 25. Manager is 65. That being said, she has a lot of older ideas and often uses her age as an excuse as to why she needs more days off than everyone else. She only works 20 hours a week. From day one, before even getting to know me, she has singled me out.
Oh, we do things differently at this location, so keep up. Oh, I used to work for a big corporation, so I know what I expect out of you.
She's constantly texting me when I'm not at work, like daily, asking me to come in early or stay late, changing the schedule around literally the night, 9 p.m. or later, before my shift. She also, for whatever reason, refuses to approve my days off, but approves everyone else's. A few months back, she gave me some days off, then revoked them mid-vacation and expected me to drop everything and come back. Since then, I've been doing the bare minimum. I'm no longer coming in on any days that she asks when I'm not on the schedule. If she changes the schedule the night before, I tell her it won't work for me. I do not stay late for any reason, and I no longer do work outside of my job description. Manager and coworkers are saying that I don't sacrifice enough for the job, and I'm not giving it my all anymore. It's a retail job, selling basically trinkets and knickknacks. But maybe I am the jerk and should just quit instead of doing more or less the bare minimum. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is the boss? Please let us know.
I think OP should find somewhere where they'll be happier to work at. That environment just doesn't sound very nice at all.
Management fined me for being a considerate neighbor, so I made life difficult for them with my payments of the fine. I live in an apartment building where everybody gets one assigned parking space per apartment as standard. You can pay for an extra one, but we don't need that. Due to a history of bad parking in the car park, they introduced a rule whereby you could be fined if you do not park in your allotted parking spot. Now, my parking space is at the end of a row. On one side, I have a wall about 1.5 meters away from the end of my parking space. On the other is the car belonging to the person who lives directly below me in the building. My under neighbors are a family with 3 kids. Knowing how difficult it can be to get all of their kids into the car seats, I have 2 of my own. I have generally given them a bit of space and parked a little outside of the line on the opposite side. Remember, next to me on the opposite side of my parking space is a wall. There's no reason for anyone to walk next to my car at that point. This is something that I've been doing for months. I understand the need to enforce the rules where cars interfere with other parking spots or walkways, but for me, parking a little outside the spot affected nobody other than my neighbor, who was given more space to get their kids into the car. I walked down to my car recently to see a note from the management office telling me I had been fined. I went to speak to them, and sure enough, it was for parking outside of the space. I tried to explain to them that it was to help my neighbor and that nobody could be inconvenienced, but they told me rules were rules and that there was nothing to do about it. I had a fine of $60 and had 40 days to pay it. Being quite riled up, I went through the relevant contract and was dismayed to find that they were indeed correct. There was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I did, however, note that there was a statement in the contract stating that every single payment received by the management company had to receive a written receipt signed for by the management company within 2 working days. There were also no rules about me having to make payments of my fine in a single deposit. So this is where the malicious compliance comes in. By this point, there was 37 days remaining to pay the fine, so I divided the 60 by 37 and set 37 recurring payments of $1.63 daily for the time remaining with my bank, which was very little effort. After a few days had passed, I went to the management office asking for my receipts. They told me they would provide my receipt upon full payment, to which I respond that the contract was quite clear. They must provide a written receipt for each and every payment, not for each and every fine, and that they were already overdue my first receipt by a day. They tried arguing with me, but it was completely clear from the contract, so every couple of days they had to fill out receipts and then walk them over to my letterbox. I have continued to give my neighbors some extra space by parking slightly over the opposite line, but as of yet have not received another fine. Well, if I'm not there at 9, why don't you break in and start without me? A few years ago in rural Australia, there was a small empty government office building, and Gary, a government department manager. The building had been vacant for about 8 months while committee after committee tried to decide what they were going to do with it. Gary was the manager of the infrastructure department, which was responsible for the upkeep and any modifications to the building. Gary was not an efficient manager. One of his favorite sayings was, "Shoot me an email," which was strange because outwardly he didn't seem to ever read them. He also had this knack of never being on time for an appointment. Not many construction industry people I spoke with seemed to take joy in dealing directly with Gary. Where we could, we'd go through everyone else in the department to get stuff done. So Gary became known as Speed Bump, something to be avoided if you could. Now, because I'm an electrical contractor who wears a few different hats, has been to a number of different rodeos over the years, and is afflicted with the curse of competency, I got roped into assisting Speed Bump with this building's future use. He asked for a 9 a.m. meeting at his office one day to discuss the building. Arriving at the outer reception 10 minutes early, I asked Jen, the receptionist, to let him know I was there. Jen comes back to me and says, "Gary's running late. He said to wait for him." About 30 minutes later, I asked Jen to remind him I was waiting. After a couple of phone calls, Jen says, "I can't get through to him in his office or on mobile. His office thinks he's left the building. No one knows where he is." I guess a reasonable person would have just called it quits and left at that point, or called or emailed him, or left a message with Jen or something. But I was sick of Gary's crap. I'd learned ages ago that one way to help people with their timekeeping skills was through their wallet. So I went out to my work vehicle, got my laptop and a bottle of water, then went back into the reception area and set up camp in a corner. I had planned an office day anyway, to work on quotations and project planning, so Gary could pay me to do it. My charge-out rate at the time was $110 an hour. 7.5 hours of very productive, spite-fueled work later, I called Gary on his mobile, got message bank, and left a message saying I waited for him and maybe we could reschedule. The next meeting was arranged for 2 days later, on site at the empty building at 9 a.m. During the phone call to arrange this, I lightly mocked Speed Bump by asking if he meant 9 a.m. human time or Gary time. He may have thought we had built some kind of convivial rapport and was just being funny when he said, "Well, if I'm not there at 9, why don't you break in and start without me?" I was on site 10 minutes early and waited until 9:05 to put the battery in my angle grinder. The stainless steel security mesh over the window made a satisfying sound being cut. After duct taping the whole window, the hammer tapping the glass edges was less satisfying. The best sound that day, after gaining entry, was the security system siren. I was outside having a smoke with the security response guard when Gary turned up. The wind kinda left his complainy sails when I shrugged and said, "Well, you did say." I'd like to close this tale by saying that Gary learned from my interactions with him. But as you'll probably know, speed bumps don't change. You either have to just go around them, deal with them, or remove them. And Gary just continued being a speed bump for some time to come. I didn't cop any serious crap over the 7.5 hour invoice or the damage. However, Gary did delegate one of his staff to work directly with me a lot more after this. It was a small win, but you have to savor those, I reckon. You're only allowed to work your contractual hours. A couple of years ago, I had a job doing some translating. The job was simple, easy, and boring, but because I had a skill set that was rare and necessary for the job, they needed me more than I needed them. Management were kind of dumb and unhelpful. The kind of managers who would try to write you up for going to the toilet too many times a day or for taking 1 minute longer on your lunch break because a queue to get past security isn't a good enough excuse. You need to be back 5 minutes before your lunch ends. A coworker of mine was reprimanded by management for doing his work too quickly. When he asked what concerns about the quality they had, they told him that it makes everyone else look like they're slacking, which looks bad to the company who outsourced us. So basically, management just wanted everyone to look busy. During my time there, I got diagnosed with a chronic illness that meant I could no longer work my original contractual hours of 40 a week. Instead, I would sign a new contract stipulating that I would work Monday through Wednesday 9 to 5. They were very reluctant to do this, and no one else was able to get such an adjustment. But since they couldn't find anyone who spoke my language, they were in a tough spot. This worked out to be beneficial for both of us. I got my work done a lot faster now that I wasn't chronically worn down and the company didn't lose my skills. One day, I received a letter from a clinic I had been referred to. I was no longer on the waiting list, and they would be able to see me for my initial appointment the following week on the Tuesday. Great, I thought. I will just let management know. So the next day, I speak to my manager. Me. Hey, I've got a clinic appointment and it's on Tuesday. I don't know how long it will last, and it's an hour's drive from work. So I was thinking I could have this Tuesday off and make up the hours on Thursday. They asked for some time to get back to me, and when I followed them up on it the next day, they told me I was only allowed to work my contractual hours, that I would have to take my holiday time off or an unpaid time off. But since it was such short notice, they couldn't approve it, and I should be more careful with my planning in the future. The thing is, I had been on this waiting list for a couple of months, and the only appointments they give for the initial one is short notice. I would value my health over work any day, so I shrugged and said okay. I called in sick on that Tuesday, citing my chronic illness, went to my clinic, and got a doctor's note from my GP. The following day, I was immediately called into a meeting. They accused me of skipping work, calling in a fake sickness, and threatened me with a disciplinary. I handed them my sick note, with my doctor explaining that my illness is chronic and prone to flare-ups. He also included his personal opinion that it's a reasonable adjustment to be able to attend any medical appointments necessary for managing my disability. There was a lot of back and forth with them, accusing me of faking it. I refused to sign any disciplinary forms, and eventually I was asked to go back to my desk while they discussed it with higher management. Some time goes by, and I'm invited back into the meeting room. Manager. We've come to the conclusion that your absence was valid and we will accept this sick note from your doctor. However, we would ask that you make up the hours that you missed this Thursday. Me. I'm pleased to hear that. Unfortunately, I will not be able to work this Thursday as I have been informed that I'm not allowed to work outside my contractual hours. After that, the meeting was pretty much over. Management wasn't happy, but I got my sick pay and didn't work that Thursday. I stuck it out for a couple more weeks, but management was super grating. When I handed in my notice, they begged me to stay, offered me a significant pay raise, more than what my next job was offering me. But working with tedious management just wasn't worth it, and I had great fun telling them that. I do work here, but I can't help you. I work in a car dealership in the offices. Employee parking is way in the back behind the service garages, but there is a walkway from that lot to the showroom. This morning, it was already 80 degrees by 8:30 a.m., so I opted to cut through the main garage and service lane, where customers first pull in and sign for appointments, to get to the showroom and my desk. Crossing the service lane, I got waved down by a customer. Thinking nothing of it, I stop and ask her what she needed. Boy, was I in for a shock. Customer.
Get my car. You're already making me late.
Me. Excuse me?
Get my car.
She stomped her foot for emphasis with each syllable, then continued.
I have to go home and pack. You people are going to make us miss check-in time.
Me. Ma'am, I don't…
Oh yes, you do work here. I just saw you walk in from the garage.
At this point, I was getting irritated. At least let me finish a sentence before cutting me off. I reply as politely and firmly as possible. Ma'am, I do not work in this department, but if you hold on for just a moment, I can get the lane coordinator to help you.
No, Stop being lazy and do it yourself. I'm tired of waiting.
At this point, she's within 6 feet of me and is jabbing her finger at me. I don't know the service procedures for lockdown, nor would I know who to ask about her vehicle status. Thankfully, the lane coordinator was coming back in from valeting another vehicle and heads over to us. Lane coordinator: "Is everything all right over here?"
No, this employee is refusing to help me. One of you lazy jerks, go get my car right now. We're going to be late because of you.
Lane coordinator: "Ma'am, she doesn't work in this department. She wouldn't know who to ask about your vehicle status. Come with me and I'll ask your service advisor." The customer follows her with a sneer as I rush to the office to finally clock in. I let my manager know what happened just in case there's a complaint from service. We laughed about it and I got to work. Later this morning, we found out that she walked in at 8 a.m. without an appointment, demanding an oil change before leaving for a trip downstate. She was squeezed in due to an earlier cancellation, but was warned that it could take longer than normal. Am I the jerk for getting off the lease and leaving my roommate to fend for herself? Okay, yeah, I know the title seems bad, but hear me out. My friend, female 19, and I, female 19, decided to move in together this May. We've known each other for more than a decade, and I considered her one of my best friends. We've always talked about living together, and 2 months ago we got an opportunity and made it into a reality. We signed a 1-year lease on a 2-bedroom apartment not too far from our college and jobs. Well, yesterday she comes into my room and says she wants to talk to me about something. She reveals the actual reason for her moving out of her parents' house. She's pregnant. Her dad is the type of guy that thinks if you're grown enough to have relations, then you're grown enough to live on your own. Not under his roof type of guy. Anyways, I've had a load of questions, and eventually she revealed that she was almost 5 months along and her boyfriend was moving in, and I was livid. She said it would be good for us because the rent will be cheaper, which is true, but that's not why I was mad. I realized she knew before signing the lease and didn't think to mention that she was pregnant and moving someone else in. I'm sorry, but I did not sign up to be living in an apartment with some man and a baby. The main reason I moved out of my own house was because I am the oldest of 4 younger siblings. There was too much going on at home, and I thought moving out I would finally have my peace. After we talked, we both went to our own rooms, and after a couple of hours, I called to talk to her again and made up my mind that I do not want to live here anymore because of the obvious circumstances. She got mad, as expected, but most of all because she doesn't have much savings and was planning to rely on my share of the rent to stay afloat while she's on leave. I've already talked to the landlord about paying to break myself from the lease. I'm sorry, but I did not sign up for this. She claims there was no contract for not getting pregnant, but there is a contract in place for us, the lease. But I feel that's common sense when you're living with someone. I feel like an awful friend because I'm not being supportive, but this isn't what I agreed to. I can see why she would be upset with me because of my sudden decision to move, 1 month notice, especially since she doesn't have much savings and is expecting a baby soon. On the other hand, she should have been honest with her intentions and starting a family because I would have just said no to moving in. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friend? Please let us know.
I don't blame you for moving out at all. I'd also rethink that friendship.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.